while others transmigrated as noble ladies or princesses. She transmigrated to become a child stepmother. Not only did she have an ugly husband, but her son was also a psychopath who liked to imprison people. After a day of panic, Sheriel finally accepted this reality. It was not the time for sorrow. To survive, she had to build good relationships with her husband and son. But which one should she approach first, the cold husband or the psychopathic son? At that moment, she heard voices outside the window. Looking up, she saw an adorable little boy. She was shocked. If he was a child of this house, wasn't he her psychopathic son? Such an adorable child was completely different from the cruel psychopath described in the novel. Thus, the cute son successfully won over the husband in priority. However, having never raised a child before, she had no idea where to start. The original novel mentioned that the protagonist had a poor relationship with his mom. She could only hide with the maid and observe. Looking at such an adorable child, she wondered why the original female lead would neglect him. Unexpectedly, she was discovered the next moment. Sheriel could only awkwardly come out to greet him. To her surprise, he ignored her and turned to leave, not wanting to miss such a good opportunity. She immediately crouched down and grabbed his sleeve. "Karthizel, could you stay here for some time?" Unexpectedly, he shook off her hand and shouted, "I don't want you." He ran away so fast that he tripped and fell. Faced with her sudden affection, Karthizel felt at a loss. "You never cared about me before, why are you pretending now?" He ran away angrily after saying this, leaving behind a confused Sheriel. Until evening, she was still thinking about what happened during the day, wondering if Karthizel's injury had healed. It seemed their relationship was worse than she imagined. Her sudden closeness would certainly make him nervous. She needed to take things slowly. Seeing the letters on the table, she thought of a good idea. She had the maid deliver the letters, hoping this would help her get closer to Karthizel. The next morning, Karthizel woke up to find gifts placed beside him. While complaining verbally, his hands were already in motion. Opening it, he found a teddy bear, a letter, and a pink box of ointment. The letter was full of Mom's care and love. He was confused why his mom, who always considered him troublesome, suddenly became so affectionate. He even didn't notice someone else had entered the room, and then quickly stuffed the letter into the drawer. But the servant had seen through everything, knowing Karthizel would keep the letters. The servant asked him if he wanted to throw away the box as usual. Karthizel looked at the teddy bear hesitantly, and told him to throw away the box but keep the doll in his room. Pouting, he explained defensively, "It's not because Mom gave it to me, I just happen to like teddy bears." He also asked the servant to help deliver a reply letter. Meanwhile, Sheriel was extremely excited when she received it, thinking that her effort had finally paid off. However, when she opened it, it only said, "Stop sending letters and gifts." She believed that although she was rejected, at least there was a response. She needed to take things slowly. The matter of winning over her husband's favor could wait. Karthizel was the priority now. So she asked where he was at the moment. The maid replied that he was in the courtyard. She quickly got dressed and headed to the courtyard. As expected, he was sitting there alone. Looking at the pastries that were prepared, he hadn't taken a bite. Sheriel walked up and asked, "Were you waiting for me?" He blushed and replied arrogantly, "No, this is where I usually come." Sheriel responded, "I'll watch you from behind and I won't disturb you." So she quickly moved behind him, watching him eat sweets with adoration, thinking, how cute Karthizel is. A week later, Sheriel stared at the table full of invitation letters in silence. She quickly wrote perfunctory replies. It was not the time for socializing. She was very busy to gain Karthizel's favor. She had even specially written an observation diary. Today he frowned when he saw me. So cute. The way he ignored me when I talked to him was also cute. Today he nodded when I greeted him. So cute. Her strange train of thought made the maid wonder if Madame had hit her head. She hesitantly suggested whether she should show it to the young master. Sheriel immediately got excited. "Do you think showing this to Karthizel would make us closer?" With that said, she couldn't wait to go show him, leaving behind a confused maid. Sheriel successfully entered Karthizel's room with a teddy bear lollipop. However, she found that the room's furnishings didn't look like a child's at all. Seeing Mom notice the teddy bear she gave him was placed on the bed, he tried to cover it with a pillow, and said, "I just haven't had time to throw it away yet, so what are you here for?" Sheriel proudly took out her diary and asked if he wanted to see it, which was what she wrote. Seeing him read the diary shyly, Sheriel thought he was so cute and innocent that he surely couldn't imprison anyone. At that moment, a flock of pigeons flew past outside, and she asked Karthizel what he would do if he encountered a precious bird. He answered nonchalantly that he would create an exquisite birdcage. Sheriel was happy that he was kind, knowing to make a beautiful home for the bird. Then she heard he continue, "Since it's a precious bird, it should be locked up so it can't go anywhere. Beautiful things should be kept for viewing." His words greatly shocked Sheriel. She had to take back what she just thought, looking at him innocently asking why she wasn't speaking. She awkwardly expressed that his thoughts surprised her. Actually, she was already panicking inside. Where had things gone wrong? Was he different from other children since childhood? What should she do now? After that day, she spent every day thinking about how to properly raise a child. The maid called her several times, but she didn't hear. The maid asked if she had something troubling her. She thought about it and decided not to tell her. However, the maid started making guesses. Is it because the master is coming back? Her words suddenly enlightened Sheriel. The master she mentioned was her husband, wasn't he? Thinking child rearing should be done by both parents, she planned to find an opportunity to discuss it with him. She had formulated a plan to approach her husband for the sake of their child. So she asked when the Duke would return. The maid answered, "Probably in these 2 days should we move to another residence." Her words confused Sheriel, and she asked the maid what she meant. The maid replied, "Madam, you has been very loving towards young master recently, and the atmosphere has improved greatly in house, so I wondered if I could ask you to welcome the master when he returns." Sheriel didn't expect how bad the relationship between the original Sheriel and her husband was, so she agreed without hesitation, and told the maid to announce that the welcome ceremony should be grand after all. Poor marital relations would affect the child. Her adorable child absolutely could not become someone whose hands were stained with blood. Since she had become his mom, she would save him. The maid was also excited upon hearing this news and ran off to prepare. Sheriel hummed happily while handling documents. Suddenly she realized she didn't know her husband's name. Meanwhile, the Duke, Kian, who was about to reach home, felt melancholic. He wondered if he would be shut out again this time, and if his wife would be home. Unexpectedly, he saw many people standing at the entrance. He was extremely shocked. It was the first time so many had welcomed him. "Welcome back, Your Grace. I've been waiting for you," Sheriel said. He stood there for a long while before finally speaking. "Am I having hallucinations? Call a doctor quickly." His subordinate hurriedly reminded him it wasn't a hallucination. Kian still couldn't believe it, staring at Sheriel until she reminded him it was cold outside. Thinking his wife might have damaged her brain from the previous fall, he took a long time to mentally prepare before deciding to go in. Sheriel specifically had the maid leave to give the couple some private space. Kian warily looked around, wondering why there was no one there, but he saw his smiling wife. This was the first time he had seen her smile like this. His hand unconsciously reached for her shoulder. "Let's go eat first," Sheriel said. He asked confusedly if there was something in the dining room. Sheriel smiled and pulled out a chair, saying she had something to tell him. His grip on the chair gradually tightened, as expected. She only acted intimate when she wanted something. He ate in silence afterward, sulking. Sheriel was also troubled, wondering what was wrong with him, and thinking about how to start the conversation. "Your Grace, I have something to say," Sheriel said. He maintained his cold expression. "Then say it." Sheriel could only force herself to find a topic. "The expedition must have been tiring?" He responded directly. "Don't you wish I was injured instead? Just be honest, what do you want?" Sheriel could only fake a smile, thinking his guard was way too high. "I want to discuss our child's education with you," he asked in disbelief. "Don't you hate me? Why are you pretending to be intimate?" Sheriel rushed over anxiously to explain she wasn't pretending, because she was too anxious. She fell straight down the next moment. Fortunately, Kian rushed to catch her. Sheriel wanted to say something more, but her stomach hurt too much to speak. Kian, who had just been coldly mocking his wife, started shouting for a doctor, and anxiously asked why she suddenly became like this. Sheriel couldn't help but retort, "You dare ask? I welcomed you so warmly, but you didn't appreciate it, kept a sour face during dinner. How could my barely recovered body handle this?" Kian turned his face away and asked sadly, "Don't you hate me very much? Whenever I get close, you shout at me to get lost." As he spoke, he held her hand and said, "You seem to have forgotten everything. I just felt your hand was very cold. Even if you don't like it, let's stay like this for now." The panicked doctor broke this intimate moment. Kian also left appropriately. Her carefully prepared plan had completely failed. Early the next morning, Sheriel was awakened by noise, trying to review yesterday's plan. It seemed that a cozy dinner wouldn't work anymore, as her stomach was now churning. She needed to think of another approach quickly. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, which puzzled Sheriel as she had instructed no one to enter. If someone was coming at this time, it must be either Karthizel or Kian. She opened the door with an excited heart, only to see her adorable son holding a teddy bear lollipop. She maintained a calm exterior while being extremely excited inside, thinking Karthizel must have come because she was ill. Faced with her excitement, Karthizel turned his face away and handed her the lollipop, telling her to eat it quickly as it would improve her mood. She smiled and accepted it, saying, "Thank you, Karthizel." Karthizel immediately blushed, saying contrary to his heart, "It wasn't me who wanted to come, the maid told me to." Sheriel knew his little thoughts but didn't expose them, expressing gratitude for his visit regardless. He kept staring at Sheriel with a red face, suddenly speaking like a little adult. "If you're tired to the point of indigestion, don't eat with Dad anymore." Sheriel thought it was his concern and smiled while explaining she would get used to it. Unexpectedly, he suddenly said, "So you're saying you'll still eat with him?" She inwardly wailed, "I don't want to either, it's all for your sake." Karthizel shouted, "Aren't you going to be with Dad? Will mealtimes always be like this from now on?" With that, he quickly ran away. She realized he might be jealous of his dad, and caught up to embrace the angry child, saying, "To Mom, you are the most important. The time spent with you is more precious than with anyone else." Seeing him remain silent, she thought he still disliked her. Unexpectedly, the next moment she was hugged back. Karthizel looked at her with grievance and said, "Mom, when you're sick you should rest well. Remember to eat my chocolate, okay?" Sheriel was moved and hugged Karthizel. She never thought having such an adorable child could be such a happy thing. Several days later, Sheriel finally recovered and prepared a gift for Karthizel. It was something she specifically made after consulting the head chef. She hoped Karthizel would like it. With an expectant heart, she came to the courtyard and found him indeed there. Seeing Sheriel arrive, he inquired about her illness. After sitting down, she took out the cake she had made herself. Karthizel's eyes lit up instantly upon seeing it. He eagerly took it to taste. The next moment, his expression became difficult. Under both their expectant gazes, he declared it was extremely unpalatable. After learning Sheriel had made it, he began eating voraciously, with Sheriel unable to stop him. As he ate, he explained, "I'm fine, I like it." After finishing one piece, he wiped his mouth and asked for another. Sheriel watched him with emotion. How could he be a psychopathic protagonist? He was clearly an ordinary, adorable child. The next day, Sheriel decided to continue implementing her plan of approaching her husband for their son's sake, so she eagerly knocked on the office door. The one who opened the door was Kian's assistant. Sheriel carefully asked, "I have something to tell you. Could we talk privately?" Unexpectedly, Kian coldly rejected her, saying he was busy. He didn't forget to add, "Didn't you hear? I'm busy. Please leave now." As a perceptive professional worker, the assistant quickly indicated he would leave. However, Kian rejected it. "There's no need for that. Return to your position." In the end, Sheriel could only leave disappointedly. It seemed she would have to find another excuse next time. The next day, Sheriel was in her room contemplating what fairy tale to read to Karthizel in the afternoon. At this time, the maid handed her a letter. It was an invitation to Duke Penzel's birthday celebration. Just as she was puzzled why the previous invitations had all been declined, she suddenly remembered the one forgotten due to the conversation with a maid. She helplessly wailed, "A birthday party!" Unexpectedly, hearing her words, the maid suddenly became energetic. "Are you preparing a birthday party for the young master? Although it's still early, I'll work hard." Wait, she seemed to have heard about Duke Penzel somewhere. Sheriel suddenly remembered. Wasn't he the second male lead in the novel? Wasn't he the one killed by Karthizel? Suddenly, Sheriel had a conflicted feeling. Surely Karthizel wouldn't kill him now, right? Well, I will definitely raise him to be a normal child. Meanwhile, Kian was still waiting for Sheriel to come, thinking since the carriage incident, she had been acting very strangely. She had always been cold and distant previously, and had never smiled at him before. But recently, she kept finding various reasons to see him, always wearing a smile. He secretly wondered if she would come to see him today. He was so distracted that he nearly stained the book with ink without noticing. The assistant nearby asked if he needed him to check if the madam had arrived. However, Kian stood up directly, making an excuse that it was too stuffy inside and he needed to take a walk, leaving behind the unfortunate assistant to handle a mountain of documents alone. The assistant didn't forget to remind Hin at the doorway. "Your Grace, if you're looking for madam, she often goes to the courtyard." Just as he approached the study, he heard Karthizel shouting "liar," followed by Sheriel asking, "Why does Karthizel say Mom is a liar?" Karthizel angrily said, "Every time you go to Dad first, didn't you say I was the most important? Do you like being with Dad that much?" Hearing this, Kian's heart instantly blossomed, but before he could rejoice, he heard Sheriel say, of course, being with Karthizel was the best. Sheriel asked Karthizel if he wanted to attend Duke Penzel's birthday with her. Karthizel asked if they needed to bring gifts. After hearing an affirmative answer, he cried, "You never prepared birthday gifts for me." This made Sheriel suddenly recall the original Sheriel's memories. On his birthday, Karthizel only wanted a word of congratulations from his mom but was met with coldness. Feeling guilty, she tried hard to comfort him. "I'm sorry. Mom shouldn't have treated you that way. I won't ever leave you alone again." It took her great effort to stop his crying. Sheriel asked if he wanted his birthday party to be grandly celebrated. He was initially refusing, but upon hearing there would be a huge birthday cake, he was deeply tempted. But he still maintained its response, whatever. When asking him what he wanted, Sheriel hadn't expected that his most desired gift was simply her birthday wishes. Thinking of how he was before, Sheriel felt more guilty. "Then make time for Mom tomorrow. Shall we hold a party in Karthizel's favorite courtyard?" Kian, who had been hiding outside the door, also heard about tomorrow's courtyard party. For this, he pressured his assistant to work overtime, completing all work in advance. The next day, he arrived at the courtyard early, only to find they hadn't planned to invite him at all. Karthizel blew out the candles amid everyone's blessings. Sheriel kept feeling like someone was staring at her. Turning around, she met Kian's gaze. She hurriedly went to greet him. "Your Grace, do you have business here?" Kian awkwardly asked what they were doing. She pointed at the crowd in the courtyard and explained, "As you can see, we're having a birthday party." Karthizel said he dislikes crowds, so only close acquaintances were invited. Kian suddenly asked why she always acted abnormally. Since she could only occasionally recall the original owner's memories, she didn't know how to answer Kian's questioning. But she didn't forget to invite him to participate in Karthizel's education. Kian asked an unrelated question. "You've been calling our son by his nickname. Why do you call me Your Grace? Could it be you don't know my name?" Faced with his question, Sheriel was immediately stumped. She had specifically asked the maid before, but because she had never used it, she had forgotten his full name. She wanted to muddle through, but he kept pressing for an answer. In desperation, she could only call out the nickname Kian. Kian's heart immediately started racing. He turned his face away, trying to appear calm. Sheriel thought she had said something wrong and awkwardly explained, "Because I want to call you Kian, is that okay?" Kian could no longer hear the explanation, his mind full of thoughts. "She calls me Kian. Could it be she's opening her heart to me?" Then he left with a red face saying, "I have matters to attend to. I'll leave first," and walked away with uncoordinated steps. Just as Kian left, Karthizel came running out. He grabbed her skirt and asked what they had talked about. She replied that they hadn't discussed anything, wondering if he also wanted his dad's birthday wishes. She hadn't thought about this at all. So she crouched down to apologize. "Are you angry because mom didn't invite dad to the birthday party?" "Actually, dad wanted to give you his wishes too, but he was too busy and left before saying hello. He wasn't looking for his dad's wishes at all. He just wanted mom to return and eat cake together." Finally, Karthizel ate cake under everyone's watchful eyes. He didn't forget to ask if she would continue to give him birthday wishes. His adorable appearance melted everyone's hearts. Sheriel smiled and said, "I will give Karthizel birthday wishes every year from now on. Your future birthday parties will be even grander." Suddenly, she unconsciously began to tear up. A voice in her heart spoke, "I wanted you to look my way, just once, even if you never praised me for anything." Seeing her sudden tears, Karthizel became flustered and said, "They say eating sweets makes you feel better. It's really delicious. Try some." Sheriel opened her mouth to eat the cake from Karthizel's hand. Perhaps it was because of the strange memories that had just invaded, but she felt she shouldn't be this happy. Several days later, Sheriel finished replying to social correspondence, but she didn't know where to go first. Karthizel was unhappy because she came late and demanded that next time she must come to him first. Meanwhile, she went to see Kian every day as usual. Kian also asked if she could come to him first. Sheriel was overwhelmed by them. She only had one body. How could she be in two places at once? While she was troubled, the maid suggested a solution. And so the current scene unfolded, the three of them in the same room without speaking a word. Sheriel pretended to drink tea, unable to understand how it had come to this. She tried to ease the atmosphere but had barely spoken 2 words. When they both turned around, "You called me?" Sheriel awkwardly said, "Not you, Your Grace. Please call me Kian." Surprised that he liked this improvised nickname so much, Sheriel had to explain she was calling Karthizel. Feeling Kian's intense gaze, Sheriel chose to ignore it and said to Karthizel, "Do you remember we agreed to go to the celebration?" Karthizel said proudly, "You mean the one where just mom and I go?" He particularly emphasized just the 2 of us. Kian, hearing this, unconsciously broke his pen, completely unable to focus on work. Sheriel and Karthizel agreed that he should get along well with children his age. Karthizel obediently agreed to her request. His compliance made her want to praise him profusely. Before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by flying papers and Kian's loud coughing. Sheriel walked over to comfort him. "Are you all right? Should we call a doctor?" Kian held her hand and asked, "Do you like our son that much?" She was puzzled by his question. Of course, he is our son. Hearing this, both of them were happy. One was happy about the R, while the other was happy about definitely liking him much. She hadn't expected them to be so easily satisfied, completely different from their initial guarded behavior. The next day, they wore matching outfits to attend the birthday party, but Karthizel secretly pulled off his tie. He pouted and asked Sheriel to help him tie it. She was startled by someone suddenly appearing behind her just after she finished. Kian quickly made up an excuse about having to go out temporarily, an excuse so poor that even his assistant shook his head. At the crucial moment, the assistant had to step in. "Madam, it's amazing that your travel route is the same as Kian's. Why don't you share a carriage?" Karthizel directly refused. Sheriel also felt today's carriage was too small to fit everyone. But seeing their strange atmosphere, she guessed Kian wanted to get closer to his son, while Karthizel was just being shy in his refusal. As a mom, she naturally wanted to help, so she suggested preparing another carriage for Kian and Karthizel to ride together. Both of them froze instantly, and immediately walked in opposite directions. Sheriel sensed she might have said something wrong again, and could only silently board the carriage. Karthizel still seemed upset. So Sheriel said, "I heard Duke Penzel always has amazing desserts at his parties." Sure enough, at the mention of desserts, his eyes lit up. He couldn't help but show an expectant expression. Then, realizing he was supposed to be angry, he turned away saying he wasn't a child who liked eating sweets. Soon they arrived at Duke Penzel's house. After getting off the carriage, Karthizel gentlemanly helped his mom down. As soon as they entered the mansion, they saw many exquisite desserts. Duchess Penzel also came to welcome them. Sheriel greatly admired Kian's image sphere. It could create photo albums just like a camera. Just as she wanted to ask Duchess Penzel where she could buy one, a flame appeared beside her face. Karthizel said coldly, "If you take my photo, I won't let you off." She could only regretfully give up capturing such cuteness. Then Sheriel followed Duchess Penzel to the courtyard. But before she could sit down, she was met with sneers. Duchess Charity said, "So, you're from the Roperam family? Since everyone's here, may I ask a question? I bought a dog, but I don't know if it's because of its high price. It won't listen to its master." Then she looked at Sheriel. "What do you think, Lady Roperam?" Sheriel was confused by her sudden question, having no idea what she was talking about. But she still honestly gave her opinion. "Perhaps you should patiently teach it to be better behaved." However, 2 ladies nearby couldn't help but interject. I don't think it's worth spending so much effort on a dog. If it's not obedient, it should be disposed of immediately, no matter how expensive a dog is. If it doesn't know its place, just get another one. Sheriel immediately realized their words had hidden meanings. Fortunately, they didn't continue this topic after speaking, so Sheriel decided not to pay attention. Who knew Duchess Charity would come picking trouble again? I think if Kian allows you to invite guests to the mansion, you could invite me. Sheriel deflected, saying it wasn't convenient without Kian's permission. Duchess Penzel interrupted them. I also have a very lovely pet parrot, but sometimes I can't understand what it says. It randomly says some vulgar words. I don't know where it learned them from. Sheriel realized Duchess Penzel was on her side and immediately played along, asking how she corrected it. What can I do? It's just a bird. How could I dispose of it just because of a few vulgar words? It's not like it's having an affair with a royal knight behind my back. Duchess Charity nearby immediately blushed upon hearing this. Seeing her affair exposed, she hurriedly left the courtyard saying she had matters to attend to. Her followers also quickly scattered. After this incident, Sheriel's admiration for Duchess Penzel grew immensely. The courtyard was now left with just the two of them. Meanwhile, Karthizel was eating walnut pie by the table when he was interrupted by a boy who suddenly approached. Karthizel showed slight disdain. If it weren't for Mom's instructions, he wouldn't play with such childish children. But he still generously took out a piece to share with the boy. Karthizel thought about how Mom said to get along well with the children, so he could only silently listen to the boy's chatter. Upon hearing the boy say his mom praised him every day, Karthizel could no longer hold back and had to compete. My mom praises me so often, I'm even getting tired of it. I don't think so, my mom definitely praises me more, the boy said. Thus, they stood there comparing their own moms for a long time, until they were interrupted by a plump boy. He pointed at Karthizel and said, my mom says his bloodline is low, and playing with him will bring a curse. After hearing this, Karthizel only asked, can you take responsibility for what you just said? The plump boy was scared into a cold sweat. At this time, Duchess Charity, who had fled in panic, also came to find her child. Seeing her, Karthizel couldn't help but comment that he really did look like his mom. Meanwhile, the two moms were still exchanging parenting experiences. Suddenly, Sheriel felt a splitting headache. Foreign memories invaded. A man pointed at young Sheriel and shouted, we must use your face to establish connections with nobility. The man appeared to be the original Sheriel's father. After recovering, she prepared to find Karthizel and return home. On the way to the courtyard, she was still wondering if Karthizel would fight, given the vivid scenes from the novel. Then she heard news that Karthizel was crying. She immediately ran to the scene. When Karthizel saw her, he also cried and ran into her embrace. Who made my child cry? In her view, bullying her was acceptable, but bullying her son was absolutely not. Duchess Charity, you'd better explain what happened. Duchess Charity trembled and stammered an explanation. My child made a small mistake. He said your son has low bloodline, but you know these are just their jokes. Sheriel said coldly, do you think it is something that can be ignored? I'll only say this once. Please apologize to my son. Seeing she couldn't brush it off, Duchess Charity had to grab her son and apologize. The boy had no choice but to come out and apologize reluctantly. Duchess Charity attempted to reach out and touch Karthizel. Sheriel immediately pulled him behind her and warned her, I won't allow anyone who hits children to touch my child. My husband will handle this matter. In Sheriel's view, the child wasn't at fault. The problem lay with parents who didn't know how to guide their children toward goodness. No one should be so careless in raising children, and that's why she couldn't forgive them. With that, she took Karthizel and headed home. She continued to comfort him in the carriage. She had thought the novel's male protagonist wouldn't be bullied, but she didn't realize that he was a child now. She apologized to Karthizel. I'm sorry. Mom should have been there with you. Although Karthizel had been crying earlier, he didn't forget to boast about getting along well with the other child. His words broke her heart. Since coming here, she had been constantly trying to make up for his lack of maternal love. She still couldn't understand why the original Sheriel would treat her own child indifferent. In her heart, Karthizel was no longer just this world's male protagonist. She had completely come to see him as her own son. Karthizel suddenly said angrily, I kept my promise to you. Don't I get a gift? She pretended there wasn't one. He became more dejected. When she said his gift would be granting one of his wishes, he immediately brightened up. He wanted her to read him fairy tales every night. Sheriel was puzzled that he only maxed such a small wish. Karthizel explained that Ladia said his mom read to him every day. Only then did Sheriel understand he was comparing mothers with the other child. So she said to him, I hope my sweet Karthizel can also have fun next time. By the time they returned to the Duke's mansion, it was already evening. As the weather gradually turned warmer, Sheriel suggested they could go boating together to cool off. Karthizel was happy just hearing the word together, but he hoped this together wouldn't include Dad. He only wanted to go with Mother, just the two of them. However, Sheriel always kept in mind that a harmonious family was key to raising good children. She would keep doing her best for her sweet Karthizel. When she returned to her room at evening, she finally had time to reflect on the day's events. She couldn't understand why Duchess Charity harbored such hostility, and why she called His Grace a barbarian. She suspected that perhaps the original Sheriel was forced to marry Kian, which explained her dislike of both husband and child. She had no previous memories, only retaining some daily habits. Sheriel found it all rather strange. She had no choice but to ask her maid what being called a barbarian meant in the Empire. To her surprise, this question greatly frightened the maid. She explained that Duchess Charity's son had said Karthizel carried barbarian blood, and those who touched him would be cursed. Since she had forgotten many things after that accident, she wanted to know what this meant. The maid hadn't realized she had lost her memories, which explained her dramatic change. Sheriel also sensed the maid's concern that she might be indifferent as before once her memories returned. So she firmly stated that she wouldn't change, as she now understood how important Karthizel was. But the maid still insisted this matter couldn't be revealed to His Grace. If His Grace knew she was being kind to him because she had lost her memories, he would surely close off his heart in pain. However, madam, His Grace would never hate you, otherwise he wouldn't have spent so much gold to marry you. Sheriel was shocked to hear this, never imagining the original Sheriel had been sold by her dad. She had thought Kian had taken her by force. Kian was actually the one who rescued the original Sheriel from a dark family. So she decided to have the maid report back with any further developments. After the maid left, Sheriel tried to recall the memories but came up empty. Karthizel was a child starved for love, claiming not to care while desperately hoping for his mother's affection. Kian appeared cold but was always taking care of her in many aspects. They were both such good people. Why had the original Sheriel treated them this way? A week later, summer arrived. The maid excitedly brought good news. Duchess Charity was no longer a countess. Sheriel hadn't expected it. The maid leaned in with more explosive news. Duchess Charity had been having an affair with a guard, and the child at the party wasn't Count Charity's own son. So Lady Penzel's words at the party were true. No wonder Duchess Charity had run away. But they had brought this all upon themselves. Sheriel didn't dwell further on this matter, instead asking the maid where Karthizel was. Hearing he was in the library, she prepared to bring him some desserts. But when she arrived at the library, it was unusually quiet. She called his name but received no answer. Finally, she found him sleeping in a corner. She had intended to wake him to sleep in bed, but when she touched his forehead, it was burning hot. Sheriel instantly panicked. She didn't know if it was due to fever or his wielding fire. She could only frantically carry him to find a doctor. At their last gathering, Ladius had not only bragged about his mother reading stories before bed, but also about how she would stay by his side holding his hand when he was sick. Karthizel had never experienced such a feeling. He wanted his mother by his side when he was ill. Though it was what he felt inside, outwardly he criticized Ladius for being unhealthy. He insisted he wasn't weak like Ladius and was certain his mother gave him more love. But he hadn't expected to actually fall ill from the magic surging within him. Although the doctor examined Karthizel and said it was temporary pain that would last for a while, Sheriel remained very worried because his body was burning hot like fire. The doctor explained that the wielding fire within him was growing, and his body couldn't yet adapt to the sudden changes. He could only provide some basic treatment for Karthizel. Despite these words, Sheriel was still extremely concerned. So she decided to personally care for him tonight. Karthizel slept restlessly due to the fever, crying that he felt hot and his head hurt, which made her heartbroken. In a confused state, he opened his eyes and called out, "Mom." She hadn't expected his first time calling her mom would be in such circumstances. He pitifully explained that he actually didn't get along well with the other children, hoping Sheriel wouldn't hate him, and saying he would try harder in the future. Sheriel quickly hugged him and comforted him. "Mom will never hate Karthizel. I'm so glad you remembered your promise to Mom. From now on, you don't need to force yourself to get along with other children. Your happiness is what matters most." A few minutes later, Sheriel finally consoled the crying Karthizel. She tucked him into bed, telling him he needed plenty of rest to recover quickly. She promised that once he was better, they would go boating as planned. Karthizel suddenly said he wanted to hear Mom read storybooks. Though puzzled, Sheriel picked up a book. He gradually fell asleep to her reading voice. Unexpectedly, Kian came in asking why she wasn't in bed yet. Sheriel quickly gestured for him to lower his voice. She hadn't expected him to still be awake, thinking he must have come because he was worried about Karthizel. So she told him not to worry and she would stay here all night, which greatly confused Kian, as she would never have done this before. She explained that she wanted to make some changes. He questioned Sheriel, "But you always hated me and Karthizel before. Why did you get angry when Karthizel cried that day?" Then he suddenly asked to hold her hand, and Sheriel extended hers with suspicion. He questioned again, "You never let me touch you before, but now you not only call my name but also let me hold your hand. Did you lose your memories after that accident?" Sheriel hadn't expected her secret would be discovered. She worried that the truth would hurt him. Kian also considered that if not for those past events, perhaps Sheriel would have been kind to him like she was now. He deeply cherished her smile, and the gentle way she called his name. He hoped she would continue to be this gentle with him before her memories returned, even if only for a while. Faced with his heartfelt confession, Sheriel could barely breathe because he was holding her too tightly. She answered seriously, "If that's what you wish, I will do it. I know you are a gentle and considerate husband. Your coldness was because you feared I would continue to hate you after regaining my memories, and would forget everything happening now." Kian was deeply moved that she understood what was in his heart. Hearing Sheriel promise she wouldn't forget his kindness even if she regained her memories, he felt somewhat relieved. So he opened his heart to Sheriel. "I'm so afraid all this will suddenly disappear. If you stop speaking to me again, I truly won't know what to do." Sheriel couldn't help but laugh seeing him like this. He was completely different from the cold Duke from the beginning. Kian explained he hadn't known she had lost her memories then. Now he understood that wasn't the case. Suddenly he made a passionate declaration to Sheriel. "I will always long for you. Even when you were cold to me, I still loved you. No matter how distant you were before, your smile could still melt my heart." Sheriel became shy at his sudden confession, stammering for him not to hold her so tightly. Hearing this, Kian mischievously held her even closer. She quickly changed the subject, asking if he hadn't come to see Karthizel. He replied, "I came to see Karthizel, but I was worried about you too." Sheriel complained that every time she went to his office he refused her, citing busy work. Kian patiently explained that he had wanted to see her. He feared happiness would vanish in an instant, so he dared not get close to her. From now on, he wouldn't run away. He would keep loving her. Suddenly, Karthizel woke from his sleep. Sheriel quickly turned to check on his condition. Hearing Karthizel say his head was dizzy, she hurriedly got a wet cloth to put on his forehead. Karthizel still didn't forget to needle his dad. "If only Mom was here by my side now, I would surely recover faster." Hearing this, Kian sensed trouble. The next second, Sheriel gently asked him to leave first. Kian wanted to prove he was useful, trying to say he had experienced this when he was young. Before he could finish, Karthizel interrupted. "Mom, he's so noisy. My head hurts." Kian was stunned. Karthizel hid in his mother's arms while giving his dad a mischievous grin, while he could only watch from the side. He wanted to say more, but was stopped by Sheriel again. "Karthizel needs rest. Please leave for now." Finally, he could only dejectedly leave. The next day, as soon as the sun rose, Sheriel was persuaded by servants Kian sent to go back to sleep. She slept for a while and then kept working. After finishing her work, she asked the maid about Karthizel. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Sheriel thought it was his grace. Shortly after, the maid brought Karthizel in. Sheriel hadn't expected him to come. She hurriedly went to check on his physical condition. Karthizel said he felt lonely without her by his side. Sheriel was very glad he had finally opened his heart to her. He looked up and asked if she was busy. If it wouldn't interfere, he wanted to stay with her. Sheriel worried he would be bored while she handled matters. Karthizel said it was fine and went to fetch a chair beside her desk. He told Sheriel he would sit quietly and wait for her to finish. They stayed like this until rain began falling outside. Hearing the maid comment on the frequent rain lately, Sheriel remembered she hadn't taken Karthizel boating yet. Karthizel, eating cake, said he was available anytime, and added that Dad would surely be too busy to go, because he must have much official business and wasn't interested in activities like boating. Just as he finished speaking, Kian appeared before them. Sheriel was startled by him. Kian said lovingly to Sheriel, as Karthizel said, "I am indeed very busy, but you are always my first priority. I will definitely make time to go with you." Hearing Dad say this, Karthizel became angry again and changed the subject to carriages. "Mom, we'll definitely ride in the same carriage together, right?" Before Sheriel could answer, Kian said they were a couple, so they should be together. Then they began to clash, with Sheriel caught helplessly in the middle. Sheriel believed they must learn to get along harmoniously, as it would create a good family atmosphere for Karthizel. An idea suddenly came to her mind. She stood up and told them to stop arguing, and said if they continued arguing, they would both have to leave. Hearing this, both of them were stunned. Then she turned her criticism toward her husband Kian. "How can you be so childish as a dad?" Kian tried to defend himself, but was met with even sterner reproach from her. Next, she turned to Karthizel. "You are also at fault in this matter. As a son, you shouldn't speak to your dad in this way. Dad also wants to spend more time with Karthizel, but he has work that must be done as an adult. We should understand him." Karthizel felt very guilty from her words and immediately admitted his mistake, saying he wouldn't act like this anymore. However, Sheriel wasn't planning to let them off so easily. Her mischievous expression made them both very uneasy. When Sheriel ordered them to hold hands until they could get along peacefully, their faces immediately changed. Sheriel completely ignored their protests. She had the maid take them to the Great Hall. Once in the hall, to fulfill Sheriel's demand, Kian simply picked Karthizel up, saying it would be easier to hold hands while carrying him. Karthizel reluctantly extended his hand and told the maid to report the scene properly to Sheriel. Kian carried Karthizel through the mansion. This unusual behavior caused much discussion among everyone. Kian sighed. "I hadn't realized there were so many servants in the mansion." Karthizel complained, "If you had agreed to let me ride in the carriage with Mom, we wouldn't be in this situation now." Faced with Karthizel's complaints, he realized his son was just a child. He had been selfish in treating him this way. No wonder his wife got angry. So he apologized to his son, and Karthizel hadn't expected Dad to suddenly apologize. He stared at his dad with disbelieving eyes, and then shyly turned away saying, "No matter what, Mom still likes me more." Kian refused to back down. "Even if Sheriel likes you more, I am still her husband." The maid watching from behind was very happy seeing them interact intimately. Soon after, the three returned to the room. They found Sheriel had fallen asleep at her desk. Seeing this, Kian put down his son. He picked up Sheriel, intending to carry her back to their room, but noticed his wife was far too light. Seeing this, the maid quickly said, "Madam often eats alone and has no appetite. She always wanted to dine with you but didn't know how to ask." Hearing that Sheriel wanted to eat with him, Kian was overjoyed and promised not to tell anyone about this. With that, he prepared to carry Sheriel back to their room. Karthizel quickly said, "Mom took care of me all night, I want to take care of her too." So the two of them took Sheriel back to her room together. Karthizel looked at the sleeping Sheriel and sighed. "Mom is really beautiful, and she's so good to me." Kian agreed. In the past, she would get angry at everyone. Now she's completely different. They took turns praising Sheriel, which made her, who was already awake, blush with embarrassment. So she decided to continue pretending to sleep. But after a long while, she heard no more sound. She cautiously opened one eye to check the situation, only to find them both watching her in perfect sync. Sheriel could only awkwardly pretend she had just woken up, and asked if their relationship had improved. Karthizel rushed to answer, "Because this is what Mom wishes, we will definitely make it happen. If you're still tired, you can keep sleeping. But can I sleep with you?" Hearing this, Sheriel immediately pulled him into her arms, while Karthizel smugly provoked his dad. "I think you can leave now." Sheriel gently pinched his face and reprimanded him. "Have you forgotten what Mom said? Don't speak to your dad that way." Karthizel grabbed her hand and said shyly, "I just love Mom so much that I want to be your most beloved person. I don't actually dislike Dad." Sheriel happily hugged him. Kian asked if he could sleep with them. Karthizel generously patted the space beside him in agreement. They lay together on the bed. Soon after, Karthizel drifted into dreamland. This heartwarming scene made Kian feel surreal, as if he were dreaming. This was the scene he had imagined countless nights, never expecting it to become reality. Hearing Sheriel smile and ask if he would be free to go boating in a few days. He thought of how when they were young, she had invited him to play together after a few days. Then he held them tightly, thinking that this time he would definitely keep his promise. The next day at work, his assistant immediately noticed his good mood, learning of his master's boating plans. The assistant finally understood why His Grace had been frequently going out to investigate lately. Just then, Sheriel knocked on the office door. Then Karthizel popped out, bluntly saying, "Dad is very busy, we should come back later." With Kian's permission, Sheriel entered and directly asked if he had time to go boating together. Kian indicated he had found a nice place, and would make time to go with them next week. A few days later, the maid prepared the travel meals early. Sheriel had specially dressed up for this outing. At this time, Karthizel came running. He said to Sheriel, "Mom, I want to ride in the carriage with you." Sheriel saw through his scheme. Karthizel wants to sit on the same side as Dad in the carriage, right? Karthizel whispered that he only wanted to sit with Mom. Not far away, Kian was already waiting early by the carriage. And so they boarded the carriage and set off. Soon the carriage reached their destination. Kian stepped out first and extended his hand, intending to help his wife down. But his hand was caught by his son instead. Seeing the smug Karthizel, Sheriel couldn't help but laugh at how they loved to compete secretly. Kian simply picked up Karthizel and smoothly pulled Sheriel close. Sheriel shyly asked how long it would take to get there, but received Kian's teasing question, "If you're tired of walking, shall I carry you?" Karthizel quickly covered his dad's mouth. Seeing their adorable behavior, Sheriel looked forward to their next outing. A while later, they finally reached the lakeside. Sheriel observed that he didn't seem to be here for the first time. Kian said he had always wanted to come here with her, and promised he would keep his previous promise today. Hearing his words, Sheriel felt like he had made a promise before. Kian explained it was from when they didn't have Karthizel yet. At this moment, the boat arrived at the shore. After Kian helped Karthizel aboard, he turned to pull Sheriel, who was still on the bank. After boarding, Karthizel happily patted the seat beside him for Mom to come quickly. Sheriel gladly sat next to him. After they settled safely aboard, they sailed toward the lake. Sheriel suddenly felt something was missing. She suddenly remembered she had forgotten the prepared lunch in the carriage. She panicked and wanted to ask the boatman to return. Kian asked what had happened. Sheriel explained she had left their meal in the carriage. Kian laughed helplessly that she was still so clumsy. Suddenly, unfamiliar memories intruded. She seemed to have heard these words before. It seemed to be when they were very young. Sheriel looked up to find their worried gazes. She quickly assured them she was fine. It was their first outing together. She couldn't ruin the atmosphere. So she hugged Karthizel and smiled, telling Kian to take them somewhere good to eat. Kian said he would cover all expenses from now on. Then he turned to tell the boatman to head to the other side. Sheriel had never heard of this town before. After disembarking at the town's dock, Kian led Karthizel. Sheriel couldn't help but feel pleased seeing their relationship finally improving, seeing them both extend their hands wanting to hold hers. Sheriel had no choice but to walk between them holding their hands. However, their elegant attire stood out conspicuously in the town, so they decided to find a clothing shop to change first. Soon they arrived at a clothing store. The owner was very welcoming and apparently knew them. He and Kian immediately engaged in friendly conversation. Sheriel, looking at clothes, kept watching them attentively, thinking they appeared to be close friends. Kian explained that they hoped to find robes that could cover their formal attire. The owner immediately brought suitable robes and asked Sheriel, "Madam, what do you think of these?" Sheriel didn't know why she felt so concerned about the relationship between Kian and him. The owner thought she disliked his recommendation. After much hesitation, Sheriel finally asked what was on her mind. "Are you friends with Kian?" He pointed to himself and said, "Madam, don't you recognize me? I was a member of the Night Corps. I used to have long hair. Because I found a new dream here, I gave up my position as a knight. I apologize for breaking my vow to serve His Grace forever. So whenever His Grace visits the town, I provide free clothing. But I never expected today that His Grace wouldn't come alone as usual, but would bring you and young master." Sheriel felt immediately embarrassed, so she tried to change the subject by discussing the clothes. At this time, Karthizel, now wearing his robe, came running over. Sheriel apologized to the owner for her misunderstanding. The owner said it was fine and expressed joy that her relationship with His Grace wasn't as bad as rumors suggested. Just then, Kian also came over, dressed in his robe. Seeing this scene, the owner felt even more relieved. It seemed His Grace could finally have a good relationship with the girl he had loved for so long. Moments later, they arrived at a nearby restaurant. Sheriel apologized to Karthizel. "Because of Mom's carelessness, we had to leave the boat early." But Karthizel said he was very happy. He really enjoyed this trip. Soon their ordered food arrived. Sheriel reminded him to be careful of the heat, telling him to blow on the food before eating. Karthizel followed her advice and carefully blew on the food. However, instead of eating it himself, he offered it to her. Seeing him being so sweet and thoughtful instantly melted her heart. Kian, watching this scene from the side, unexpectedly found himself being fed by Sheriel the next moment. After dinner, they took the carriage home. Karthizel, tired from a day of play, fell asleep as soon as they boarded. Sheriel said to Kian, "Thank you for arranging everything today. I hope we can find another chance to go out together." Kian looked at his drowsy wife, thinking, "I promise there will be countless such trips in the future." Seeing them return, the servants quickly came forward to take Karthizel. Sheriel declined their help, saying she wanted to put Karthizel to bed with Kian. The assistant hastily mentioned hoping His Grace would come to the office after settling young master. Before he could finish, the maid silenced him with a swift punch. At this moment, Karthizel awoke, and Sheriel suggested he bathe before sleeping. But, unexpectedly, he refused, saying he wanted to sleep alone, which surprised her greatly. When she curiously inquired why, he declined to explain. Karthizel said it was a secret between him and Dad. "I'm sorry I can't tell you, Mom. No need for fairy tales tonight either. You must be tired too." Sheriel fondly patted his head, saying, "My sweet Karthizel has really grown up, knowing to care for Mom." Then she turned to Kian, curious about what agreement he had with Karthizel. But they seemed to have planned this beforehand, both refusing to tell her. She wondered if perhaps Karthizel wanted them to become closer, so she stepped forward and took Kian's hand. But surprisingly, he trembled nervously. Was Kian still afraid she would suddenly regain her memories? She then asked Kian how he felt about today's excursion. Before Kian could answer, another memory surfaced. The original Sheriel had cried in despair, "I cannot love him. I don't deserve happiness. But I can't stop myself from wanting to say I love him. I'd rather have him hate me." Only then did Sheriel realize something was amiss. The original Sheriel had apparently loved Kian. But why had she pushed him away so ruthlessly? Something must have happened. Seeing her troubled expression, Kian immediately expressed concern. "You must be tired from the carriage ride today. You should get some early rest to recover." Sheriel knew he feared the day she might suddenly regain her memories. So she asked directly, "Why do you still love me even though I was so harsh to you before? Why do you love me so blindly?" He answered, "To be honest, I don't know. Perhaps it's because of your smile, or sometimes your endearing clumsiness. I just love you unconditionally, will you believe that?" Sheriel lowered her head and asked, "Even though I haven't returned your feelings equally?" Kian hadn't expected her to suddenly discuss these matters. Sheriel explained, "This period feels like a dream. You must still worry about me regaining my memories. Why don't you tell me the truth? How did our relationship become like this?" Kian wanted to speak but held back. "Perhaps I'm being selfish, not wanting to tell you what happened." Sheriel didn't want to miss this opportunity, holding him to make him reveal the truth. "Why do you keep avoiding it? I know you won't hurt me. Please stop avoiding it." Faced with her sincereness, Kian couldn't hide himself. He embraced her and kissed her. After Sheriel being refused information about the past by Kian, the servants also seemed to have received some order to remain silent about previous events. At her wit's end, she suddenly remembered the letter from Lady Penzel. Based on the last gathering, she seemed well informed about the rumors. She must know something about their situation, so she went to find Karthizel and told him that Ladius wanted to play with him and had only invited them. In that case, no one would disturb them while they played. Karthizel asked if it was really Ladius who wanted to play with him. Sheriel confirmed it was. Hearing this, Karthizel suggested inviting them to his home instead. He excitedly mentioned that he had always wanted to invite a friend to his house. Sheriel was thrilled when he used the word friend, as it meant they had deviated from the tragic plot of the original novel. So she said she would write the letter of invitation right away. Soon the appointed day arrived. Karthizel was also looking forward to this meeting. Sheriel was relieved that he had made a new friend. At this moment, a maid came to announce Lady Penzel's arrival. And then they came in. Lady Penzel expressed her gratitude and anticipation for this invitation. Ladius also greeted them like a gentleman. Sheriel smiled and mentioned that Karthizel had been waiting for this day for a long time. Ladius asked, puzzled, if she was referring to Karthizel. Karthizel quickly responded, "Ladius, it's nice to see you again." Sheriel was in confusion, wondering if they were really good friends. Karthizel suggested showing Ladius around his family. Sheriel was very happy that he could make friends and agreed. Lady Penzel also reminded Ladius to get along well with his friend. So the two children went off to play by themselves. Sheriel and Lady Penzel also began their pleasant afternoon tea time. She even had specially prepared the finest tea to serve. Lady Penzel showed great interest in it, as it reminded her of a friend. Unfortunately, she was ill last time, so Sheriel hadn't met her. Sheriel offered to pack some tea for them to take when they left. At this point, Lady Penzel mentioned that her friend had pink hair and deeply loved her child, which reminded Sheriel that the heroine in the novel also had pink hair, and her mom had long suffered from illness. So she asked Lady Penzel if her friend's child was 7 years old and also had pink hair. Hearing the affirmative answer, she realized this was the heroine from the novel, the one who would be imprisoned by Karthizel. Lady Penzel asked how she knew these details. Sheriel was stunned and didn't know how to explain. She quickly made up an excuse about having previously looked into children of Karthizel's age. Surprisingly, Lady Penzel believed her, and mentioned that Karthizel was only a year apart from her friend's daughter. Sheriel definitely knew it. In the original novel, the heroine's mom died when she was 8, just 1 year before her tragic fate would begin. After that, her dad turned to heavy drinking out of grief. Opportunists took advantage of this to saddle him with massive debt, which made their family collapse. Her dad finally chose to end his life. After her dad's death, the heroine had no choice but to work at the Roperam family to pay off the debt. Thus, she was noticed by Karthizel and imprisoned. To prevent the tragedy from happening, Sheriel decided to help them. The only solution now was to cure the heroine's mom. She could be cured if treated early. They had given up treatment due to the high costs in the novel. However, Sheriel knew another method, but she needed to meet the heroine's mom first. So, she expressed to Lady Penzel her desire to visit, asking if that would be possible. Lady Penzel gladly agreed. Then Sheriel remembered the purpose of this invitation. Then Lady Penzel, noticing she seemed to have something to say, proactively brought up the topic. "I see you look worried. I'm willing to listen to whatever you have to say." Sheriel pretended to be curious about rumors about her, since she rarely participated in social circles. Lady Penzel immediately began describing the romantic love story between Sheriel and Kian that circulated in social circles. "You don't know how famous your love story is. Kian fell in love with you at first sight when you were still a child, and even used a marriage proposal to help you pay off your debts. After you said you only wanted a peaceful life, even the wedding was held on a small scale." Lady Penzel gestured excitedly, expressing how thrilled she was when she heard about coming to the birthday party. Sheriel found it hard to believe. The romance novel-like plot was difficult to reconcile with Kian and Karthizel's initial reactions. Lady Penzel frankly stated that their love story was the only rumor about her, telling her not to worry. Seeing that she couldn't get much information from Lady Penzel, Sheriel contemplated relying on her suddenly emerging memories. Their conversation then turned to the children. Sheriel openly shared the diary she wrote for Karthizel. As they were chatting, there was a sudden knock at the door. Several servants who followed Karthizel entered, hesitantly saying that Karthizel and Ladius were. Both women immediately became tense and urged him not to hide anything. He finally said they were causing destruction. Sheriel immediately said she would follow them to the scene. When Sheriel arrived, the place was in complete disarray, with traces of fire everywhere. The ground was covered in the children's chaotic footprints. She immediately called out to Karthizel. Karthizel, covered in dirt, turned around startled, seeing him looking at her pitifully. She quickly reminded herself not to soften. Wrongdoing must be punished. So she sternly said to Karthizel, "This is the family's training ground. What you do will harm those who protect us." Karthizel sincerely apologized. "Mom, I was wrong. I only meant to show Ladius the training ground." A few minutes earlier, Karthizel had brought Ladius here, telling him about how knights train daily. Ladius was unimpressed, stating his family had best knights, which made Karthizel very unhappy. Then Ladius asked, "You can wield fire, right?" Karthizel proudly confirmed. Ladius asked if he could drive away heavy rain. Karthizel was instantly provoked by his words. Ignoring the servant's attempts to stop him, he prepared to use magic. Ladius taunted from the side, "Your flames look like they're about to go out." Karthizel immediately increased the fire's intensity and threw it into the training ground. The training ground was instantly engulfed in flames. Surrounding trees were set ablaze. The servants were all terrified. Karthizel looked triumphantly at Ladius. Ladius also applauded, hearing Karthizel taunt that he had no comparable abilities. He then used magic, splitting a distant tree in half at the trunk. Karthizel, unwilling to be outdone, declared he could burn all the trees here. Ladius said he could do that too, so they planned to duel for their family's honor. The servants rushed forward to stop them, but Karthizel was beyond listening to reason at this point, so they hurried to report. Recalling this, Karthizel said that he just didn't want their family to seem weaker than the Penzel family. Sheriel understood why he had acted that, so she told Karthizel to change clothes first to avoid catching cold. Meanwhile, Lady Penzel was also scolding Ladius. Sheriel suggested that Ladius should also change clothes, but Lady Penzel said she hadn't brought any spare clothes for him. Sheriel offered to lend him some of Karthizel's clothes. Lady Penzel felt apologetic, but thinking they couldn't let the child catch cold, she happily accepted the suggestion. Moments later, the two came downstairs hand in hand, having changed clothes. Sheriel was happy to see they had made up. Ladius politely apologized. "Madam Roperam, I'm very sorry. And Karthizel, I sincerely apologize to you." Sheriel was impressed by his politeness. She then turned to Karthizel. "Karthizel, I think you'll apologize too, won't you?" Karthizel lowered his head and obediently apologized to them. But suddenly he changed his tone. "Ladius, you seriously suck." His words startled Sheriel, and when she wondered what he meant, she noticed they were already chatting harmoniously again. Compared to her confusion, Lady Penzel thought it was normal for boys to fight. Early the next morning, Karthizel came to his mom carrying a book, and hoped she would read him a fairy tale. It was a book called The Winter Witch. Sheriel happily agreed. She then opened the book and began to read. When winter came, people can see a witch in certain places. She possessed powerful magic that could grant any wish. To alleviate her daily boredom, the witch began using human souls to grant wishes. So many people were willing to risk everything for their loved ones. When reading this plot, it caught Sheriel's attention. It sounded very familiar. Before she could think further, Karthizel interrupted. "Mom, what happens next? What happened to them?" Seeing how much he liked it, she continued reading. Afterward, no matter how high the odds, the witch never lost. But this was all actually her trick to collect human souls. The strong emotions within souls would make her magic more powerful. Karthizel excitedly said, "Mom, does that mean the stronger the emotions, the stronger the magic? Then I must be more powerful than Ladius because I love Mom so much." Sheriel quickly hugged him and said she loved Karthizel very, very much too. Karthizel then asked, "I know Mom loves me, what about Dad? Does Mom love Dad?" This question caught Sheriel off guard. She then answered honestly, "Yes, although I don't know if I have the right to." Sheriel knew Kian loved the original Sheriel and not her, but even so, she still liked him. However, Karthizel didn't understand what she meant, and asked why she shouldn't love Dad. Sheriel could only explain that she had been too harsh to him before. "If you ask Dad if he loves Mom, I think he would say yes." Kian suddenly appeared, asking if she was reading fairy tales to Karthizel. Sheriel was startled by his sudden appearance. Thinking of what she had just said, she immediately became flustered, worried he had heard her words. Kian said he wanted to talk to Karthizel about yesterday's incident. Sheriel sighed in relief. Apparently he hadn't heard, and told him Karthizel had already admitted his mistake, asking him not to scold him further. Kian said he knew, but Karthizel needed to be properly reprimanded. Sheriel hugged her son and pleaded, trying to get him to let Karthizel off. Seeing Kian still wouldn't relent, she put Karthizel down and said to him, "If Dad punishes you too harshly, you must tell Mom." But Karthizel didn't take it seriously at all, bouncing forward to grab his dad's hand. Kian hadn't expected his son to take his hand voluntarily, so he picked Karthizel up. Before leaving, he suddenly turned back to look at Sheriel and said, "I'll give you the answer you want before bedtime. See you tonight." Sheriel was completely stunned, so he had heard everything. After reading Karthizel the witch's story during the day, that night Sheriel dreamed of her. The witch said time had passed so quickly, asking if she remembered their promised day was approaching. She woke up startled, wondering if her conversation with the witch was just a dream. Kian noticed her sudden awakening, and knew she must have had another nightmare. Sheriel was puzzled by his use of another. Had she frequently had nightmares before? Kian wanted to explain but hesitated. After placing a damp towel on her forehead, he said she needed to rest for now. Sheriel grabbed his hand. "But I want to know, will you tell me? Are the nightmares related to my memory loss?" Kian had to tell her about some things from their childhood. Their first meeting was when they were young, with Sheriel politely greeting him. The next moment she tripped due to nervousness. He couldn't help but laugh, and earned a fierce glare from young Sheriel. He hadn't expected they would meet again, but after that she often came. Although his private space was disturbed, he couldn't help but develop feelings for this cute girl. Kian said he could only tell her this much for now. Sheriel dissatisfiedly asked why he couldn't say more. Kian continued, "Years ago, I made you a promise, that we would be like we were as children. I never expected that I would break that promise, only able to fulfill it when you lost your memories. Therefore, I don't want you to recover your memories." Sheriel wanted to ask more but was interrupted by him. "You should rest now. Don't be afraid. I'll stay by your side. You won't have nightmares again." However, after that night, they maintained their distance. The maid cried, asking if she had quarreled with His Grace. Why were they suddenly sleeping in separate rooms? Sheriel became angrier after hearing this. Why not go ask him the reason he suddenly wanted to sleep separately? After that day, Kian went to sleep in another room, using work until late as an excuse. Even his assistant couldn't find him. He was clearly avoiding her deliberately. At this moment, Karthizel suddenly ran in calling, "Mom!" He asked if it was because of his misbehavior that she and Dad were fighting. Sheriel hadn't expected him to think it was his fault. She quickly comforted him. Dad and Mom just encountered some problems. Mom wanted to ask Dad about some things he doesn't want to discuss. Karthizel clearly didn't understand why they would fight over such small matters. She hugged him and replied that they weren't fighting, just organizing their thoughts. But you're not sleeping in the same room anymore. She hugged him amusedly and asked, wasn't he the one who had most opposed them being together before? But Karthizel suddenly acted like an adult, spreading his hands and shaking his head. Mom, you don't hate Dad, right? You want to get along with him well, right? She was very confused by his sudden questions, but honestly answered yes. Karthizel jumped down and snapped his fingers, saying to those outside the door, I finished talking with Mom, you can take over now. Just as Sheriel was wondering what was happening, 2 servants entered, and apologized to her. This is young master's order, please forgive us, madam. Thus they lifted her up, one on each side. Karthizel stood watching. Mom, you taught me to be kind to friends, so why are you fighting with Dad? Sheriel had guessed what he was planning. Karthizel walked lightly to open the door and indicated they could proceed. Upon receiving the order, they began walking out, regardless of how Sheriel called to him. Then Sheriel was brought to Kian's office. Although Sheriel wanted to clear things up with him, not under such awkward circumstances. Kian was also caught off guard. His son had said he wanted to ask about magic, instructing him to wait in the office. He hadn't expected his wife to be brought in being carried. He immediately realized his intention. So he apologetically told Sheriel that he had indeed been avoiding her before. I knew you were doing it on purpose. Why did you do this? He embarrassedly said quietly that he didn't want her to recover her memories. The reason why he talked about their childhood was he had spoken impulsively out of sympathy seeing her have nightmares. After saying that he regretted it, fearing she would recover her memories. So he thought to avoid her and delay as much as possible. Hearing this, Sheriel was already moved but still reproached him that he should have told her the truth. But he feared these days were just an illusion. So Sheriel gripped his hand tightly, telling him not to be afraid. Even if she recovered her memories in the future, it wouldn't change. I will try my hardest to tell you, I love you. It will never change. This made Kian feel even more selfish. Sheriel said she didn't blame him and wouldn't ask about the past anymore. Thus, the couple resolved their misunderstanding. A month later, the day came to visit the heroine. Before leaving, Sheriel instructed the maid to take good care of Karthizel, as she might not return until the next day. Lady Penzel was also waiting early at the door. She was looking forward to the 3 of them discussing children, and thoughtfully suggested Sheriel could call her by her first name, Vanessa. Sheriel was overjoyed, as it indicated their relationship had grown closer. They soon arrived at the destination. Viscountess Fornell was already waiting in the reception room to welcome them. She expressed her honor at their visit, and brought out the tea that Sheriel had sent to treat them. Vanessa told me the tea has pain-relieving effects. It's wonderful to have tea instead of the bitter medicine I've been taking. But is there a special reason for your visit, madam? Sheriel gave her prepared explanation. I heard your daughter is about the same age as my son, and you also love your child very much. I think we could certainly become close friends. Viscountess Fornell gladly accepted this explanation. At this moment, a little girl ran in. Sheriel immediately recognized her as Rhea, the heroine from the novel. Rhea curiously looked at the visitors in her home. As she met Sheriel's gaze, Rhea couldn't help but exclaim, "What a beautiful lady!" Then, realizing her rudeness, she carefully apologized. Sheriel was charmed by her cuteness, unable to understand how Karthizel could imprison such an adorable girl. She quickly introduced herself. Rhea also politely greeted her. Viscountess Fornell wanted her to go rest, but Rhea said she hadn't heard her bedtime story yet. Suddenly, Viscountess Fornell began coughing violently, and then she suddenly fell backward. The sudden incident left them all panicked. Lady Penzel immediately called for a doctor. It seemed Viscountess Fornell's condition was worse than imagined. Fortunately, the doctor arrived quickly. Rhea cried, saying it was the first time her mom had coughed up blood. Sheriel patiently comforted her not to worry. Her mom would get better with proper rest. But inside, she was anxious to quickly find a treatment method. However, in the current situation, it was difficult to speak privately with Viscountess Fornell, so she could only first learn about the situation from Rhea. Rhea also expressed wanting to spend more time with Sheriel. As it happened, Lady Penzel also needed to check on her friend's condition. Rhea said she would behave and stay with Sheriel, and asked the maids to take care of her mom. Thus only they remained in the reception room. Sheriel wiped her tears while asking if she believed in Madame Fairy. Rhea instantly brightened. Is it the legendary fairy who brings good luck? Sheriel then told her a popular fairy tale. In the cold winter, a child got lost in the forest. She was very hungry and hadn't eaten all day. Fortunately, she found bread under a tree. However, an old woman appeared and asked if she could share the bread. She shared half the bread. The old woman thanked the girl by blessing her. You are a good child. The fairy of Karthizel may look upon you and offer you a special gift. After speaking, the old woman transformed into a silver fairy. The girl received the fairy's blessing and soon reunited with her family. Sheriel thought, if Rhea hears this story, it will be easier to explain what comes next. As expected, Rhea deeply believed in the fairy tale. Sheriel leaned closer and said, in that case, do you believe I am a fairy who brings good luck? Rhea immediately brightened. You have the same hair color as a fairy, and you're as beautiful as one. I believe you. After making Rhea promise that everything said today would remain secret, Sheriel told her, now I will give you a lucky blessing. If you do as I say, your mom will get better. Rhea looked at her with admiration. Sheriel handed something to her. Rhea looked puzzled at the flowers in her hand, saying, they seem to have withered. Sheriel explained, they're not withered, they just haven't fully grown yet. You must mix them with the water when your mom bathes. Rhea blinked her big eyes, asking if this would bring good luck. Right. But you must do exactly as I say. Don't forget it has to be in the moonlight. Can you do that? Rhea quickly nodded, saying she could definitely do it well. After speaking, she threw herself into Sheriel's arms and expressed her gratitude. Sheriel looked at her adorable manner, thinking that now that Karthizel had been properly educated, she could find an opportunity for them to meet early. In that case, they would have a good beginning. So she invited Rhea to visit her home next time. At evening, Viscountess Fornell sat dejectedly on her bed. She had enjoyed sharing afternoon tea with the other ladies, but unfortunately her health was deteriorating. She didn't know how much longer she could live. As she pondered, she heard a knock at the door. Then she saw her daughter run in. She asked why she wasn't in bed yet. Rhea explained she was here to fulfill her promise to Madame Fairy. Viscountess Fornell felt confused, but before she could react, she was pulled outside. Rhea had already prepared bath water in another bathroom. When they reached the bathroom, Rhea said she hoped Mom would bathe here today, and explained it was because Mom's bathroom couldn't see the moon, and Madame Fairy said the moonlight must shine on the water surface. Viscountess Fornell was bewildered by her constant mention of Madame Fairy. Seeing her so eagerly prepared, she chose to go along with her game for some reason. She entered the tube and embraced Rhea. Miraculously, the seemingly withered flowers began blooming one by one. Viscountess Fornell noticed it too. Rhea picked up a blooming flower and excitedly shouted that what Madame Fairy said was true. Viscountess Fornell wondered who the Madame Fairy was that she spoke of. Just like in the fairy tales Mom tells me, Madame Fairy said, if we do as she says, you'll get better. She'll bring us good luck. Though Viscountess Fornell didn't know who had told Rhea these, she actually felt much better. Her head wasn't dizzy anymore. No medicine had ever had such an effect. She hadn't received any doctor's treatment recently, nor taken any different medicine. Why would she suddenly feel better? Looking at her excited daughter, she found herself believing, asking, Rhea, are you sure these were given by Madame Fairy? Yes, she said if we continue bathing for 100 days, good luck will stay with us forever. Viscountess Fornell realized that constant good luck might mean her illness would be cured. At this point, Rhea excitedly shouted, these flowers are dancing like Madame Fairy. Viscountess Fornell agreed they looked like fairy hair, then suddenly realized, silver hair like a fairy's. Wasn't that Madame Roperam? Did she know how to treat her illness? Though it was common for Madame Roperam to help lower-ranking nobles. Although she didn't know why, as long as Rhea could be happy. Suddenly, she remembered Sheriel saying in the afternoon that she reached out to her because she believed they shared the same family values. Perhaps Madame Roperam could understand how much she treasured her own daughter. Rhea might seem mischievous, but she was kind. She hoped she would have enough time to stay by her side, to watch her grow up. She had been quietly waiting for her fate before, but in truth, she didn't want to die at all. How could she bear to leave her daughter? Seeing her mom cry, Rhea tried to comfort her. Viscountess Fornell embraced her and promised she would always stay by her side from now on. That evening, when Sheriel returned home, she found Karthizel and Kian still in the office. So she secretly listened to their conversation outside the door. Karthizel said seriously, a dress the same color as Mom's eyes would be best, but Kian disagreed. Sheriel looks like a mermaid, so I think blue suits her best. Sheriel immediately felt shy, so she pretended she hadn't heard anything, and quickly headed back to her room. Just as she was about to make her escape, she was caught by a tiny hand. Mom, when did you come back? After being caught eavesdropping, Sheriel awkwardly asked what they were talking about. Their answer was surprisingly unanimous. We were talking about you. She blushed instantly, thinking how could they said it in front of her. So she quickly changed the subject. Kian, have you finished your work? And Karthizel, have you completed your homework? They replied in unison again. Yes, we have. At that moment, a servant came to remind Karthizel it was time for his lessons. Karthizel expressed that he wanted to stay with his mother a bit longer. Only after Sheriel's persuasion did he reluctantly go to class, which resulted in only she and Kian remained in the room. After Karthizel left, Kian became lost in his own thoughts. Sheriel wondered if something had happened, and hurriedly approached to ask if he had any troubles. Seeing him shake his head indicating no, she knew right away he was lying to her. If I tell you, will you comfort me? Sheriel smiled and replied, of course. Although she knew what was troubling him most was probably his fear of her regaining her memories. She continued asking who made him feel sad, and emphasized that she was being serious. Kian grabbed her hand, praising her for being very adorable. Then he released her hand, saying if she continued to tempt him like this, he might become more dependent on her, and she wouldn't be able to escape. Sheriel caressed his cheek and said, I like you, so I want to get as close to you as possible. After saying this, she prepared to leave, telling Kian she hoped he wouldn't push himself too hard. Finally, Kian stood alone in place. The next day, Kian recalled his conversation with Karthizel from yesterday. Karthizel had heard that if mom and dad slept together, he would have a little brother. But after so long without seeing one, he came to question dad about when he would fulfill his promise. Karthizel promised to maintain their current family state, and also asked dad to keep their promise, because he wanted to see mom smile all the time. His words made Kian suddenly realize their family was what mattered most. So he solemnly promised his son that he would do it. While eating bread, Karthizel asked when their next family trip would be. He had already decided what color dress mom should wear. Kian hadn't expected Sheriel to appear then, and was relieved she had only heard the latter part of the conversation. At this moment, his assistant approached with a smile, asking what made him laugh. Kian told him not to ask useless questions, saying they needed to handle matters quickly to avoid arousing Sheriel's suspicion. The assistant asked, puzzled, "But regarding Count Owen's letter, are we really going to dispose of it without telling Madam?" Kian sternly ordered him to burn the letter before Sheriel discovered it. The assistant inquired, perplexed. Wasn't Madam a member of the Count's family before she married here? In his view, the Madam had always been indifferent towards them, but she warmly welcomed the Count. He couldn't understand why His Grace wanted to maintain a good image before his wife, while secretly handling the Count's letters. However, Kian disagreed. He understood Sheriel, knowing the relationship between her and her father wasn't as good as it appeared. The Count just treated her as a tool for the family, always finding ways to borrow money during his visits. The last person Sheriel saw before losing her memory was him. At that time, he could do nothing. But now it was different. He would protect her no matter the cost. Early the next morning, Sheriel was informed that Kian had to meet the Emperor, but she hadn't expected him to leave before she woke up. While feeling disappointed about not being able to say goodbye, she suddenly noticed him appear beside her. She was startled, and scolded him for always appearing suddenly, and said he should have woken her earlier. Kian said softly, "How could I bear to disturb you when you were sleeping so peacefully?" Sheriel knew he had work to attend to, and promised that she would wait for him at home and asked him to take care of himself. After he left, Sheriel lay alone on the bed. The maid asked if she felt lonely. She confirmed that yes, Kian had just left, and she already felt lonely. Suddenly, she remembered Viscountess Fornell. The maid brought out a letter from Viscountess Fornell. Sheriel felt relieved after reading it. Viscountess Fornell had improved significantly, and at the end of the letter, she specifically emphasized her gratitude to Madame Fairy. Sheriel blushed. She hadn't expected Rhea to tell her mother everything. Fortunately, their fate had been changed, thus Rhea wouldn't be so miserable. She lay back in bed thinking she still needed to come up with an excuse for the treatment method. She couldn't exactly say she'd read it in a novel. Lost in thought, she gradually fell asleep. When she woke again, she found herself in darkness, and crying sounds surrounded her. Sheriel moved forward puzzled and saw a girl crying. It was young Sheriel. Sheriel crouched down and asked why she was crying so heartbrokenly. Young Sheriel replied, "I think it's better if you don't know. If you find out, you'll never forget it, and won't be able to live happily like you do now." Sheriel didn't want to live with such uncertainty. Only by knowing the truth could her relationship with Kian truly improve, so she begged for help in recovering her memories. Young Sheriel became more distressed upon hearing this, and questioned why she had to know the truth. Why can't you accept a chance at happiness? That you who knows the truth will hurt those who loves you again. Sheriel firmly replied, "I won't. No matter what happened in the past, I know how important the people around me are." Young Sheriel finally gave up trying to persuade her, knowing that keeping things hidden wasn't a solution. "I know you've come to really like them now. I'll teach you how to access your memories. An despicable person appeared in my life. That was our father, Count Owen." Upon waking, Sheriel recalled what young Sheriel said at last. "The key to your memory is your father." Still deep in thought, she was interrupted by Karthizel. "Mom, are you busy? I learned a new sword technique and want to show you." After receiving her permission, he happily ran outside to wait while she changed clothes. However, the maid kept trying to prevent Sheriel from going out. She asked, "Did something happen today, or is there something you're hiding?" But she got no answer from the maid. As soon as she stepped out, she heard commotion outside. Karthizel also pulled at her, trying to get her to take another route. She was worried something had happened, and with Kian away she needed to understand the situation. So she told Karthizel she wanted to check what was happening before watching his performance. But Karthizel kept making excuses to get her back to her room. The servants at the door also became very nervous upon seeing her. They all rushed forward to prevent her from walking further. Sheriel realized their unified resistance must have been arranged by Kian. She suspected someone she shouldn't see was outside. The next moment, a man appeared. "It's been a long time, Sheriel." Due to the order, the guards were all preventing him from entering the mansion. As soon as he saw Sheriel, he demanded to know why they wouldn't let him in. Sheriel realized he had deliberately chosen a time when Kian was away to visit, but this was also her best chance to learn the truth. He would surely speak freely about the past, so she ordered the guards to let him in. Only then did the guards allow him entry. The Count shamelessly asked Sheriel why she treated him so rude. Sheriel didn't want to say more and directly asked the maid to take him to the meeting room. Because from the first moment she saw the Count, she felt utterly disgusted. She couldn't help but wonder what kind of person would evoke such a reaction. Karthizel also noticed her expression and worriedly begged her not to make such a face. because she used to always wear that kind of expression, and it scared him. Sheriel crouched down and apologized. I'm sorry, Karthizel. Mom promises not to make such frightening expressions anymore. Every time I see Karthizel, I want to smile. Having such a sweet and gentle child makes me feel very blessed. Don't worry, Mom won't become like before. Now Mom needs to go receive a guest. Please wait in your room. Karthizel firmly insisted on going with her, saying he would protect her while father was away. If that person hurt her, he would burn him to ashes. Sheriel was touched by his protection and agreed. Upon entering the meeting room, she lifted him onto the sofa. Then came the Count's mockery. You two look very close now, but you used to look at him with such cold eyes before. Oh, I see. Perhaps you're of lowly blood, so you want to love your son who has equally barbaric roots? Sheriel hadn't expected him to speak it in front of a child and angrily stopped him, and Karthizel also manipulated flames. The Count continued, I don't think you've taught him well. He's trying to burn his grandfather to death. Karthizel confronted him bluntly. If you dare hurt my mom, I will do it. Sheriel told Karthizel to withdraw his flames. The Count added, Don't you want to know why I say you and your mother are of lowly blood? Well, it's better if he leaves. We still have things to discuss. Karthizel insisted he wouldn't leave, saying he couldn't let mother be alone with someone like him. Sheriel knew the Count was despicable. If Karthizel stayed, he might say something worse. She didn't want Karthizel to get hurt, so she asked Karthizel to leave the room for a while. Karthizel was reluctant, but hearing her request, he could only remind her to call him if anything happened as he walked out. As soon as Karthizel left, the Count said with a burst of laughter, I see you've tamed them well. Now both Kian and his son are in the palm of your hand. Since the troublemaker is gone, let's get straight to the point. I need some business capital. These words made Sheriel's head ache, as if the same thing had happened countless times before. Then she recalled more memories. This time the Duke had accumulated considerable wealth from his expedition. Just hand you over to him and I can get funds to pay off debts. Even though she strongly resisted, he wouldn't listen at all and even resorted to violence. Sheriel replied relentlessly, As far as I know, your business investments have never turned a profit. You know it very well yourself. The Count hadn't expected her to refuse his demands, which made him angrier. You're nothing but the child of a lowly servant. Shouldn't you be grateful I let you live a noble life? The truth about her background was something Sheriel never expected. She suddenly remembered her mother had the same hair color as her. They had lived happily until it was suddenly shattered. The Count sent soldiers to snatch her away. No matter how much her mother cried out, nothing could change the fact that she would be taken away. She was brought to the Count's mansion like this, and her name also was changed, just because she had a similar colored pupils with the Count. Thus she became the Sheriel everyone knew. Fortunately, her mother also managed to get hired as a nanny. During rare moments of leisure, she could still play with her mother, but their interactions still needed to be very careful. Mother was afraid of being discovered by the Countess. Young Sheriel believed the Countess didn't like her, so she wouldn't pay much attention to her. Mother kissed her hand and said, How could the Countess not like you? My Sheriel is so pretty and adorable. She knew that only Mother would think so here. The next day, she was stopped by the Countess. She had a bad feeling, and quickly thought about whether she had made any mistakes in her recent lessons. The Countess had never summoned her before. Don't be so scared. I just feel I've been too cold to you before, so now I want to take better care of you. Do you have anything troubling you? Sheriel didn't know why she asked this. The Countess caressed her face and asked, I see you really like playing with the nanny lately. Why do you prefer being with the nanny instead of me? Sheriel was terrified upon hearing this, as playing with her biological mother was her only time of freedom, but she remained silent. The Countess continued, If you don't like staying with me, then get out of my sight. Young Sheriel thought, although the Countess wasn't very angry. Her demeanor was indeed strange. At evening, Mother came to Sheriel's room. Looking at her sleeping face, Mom wept and apologized. I'm sorry. I have promised to protect you forever. After she placed a pendant in Sheriel's hand, she continued to said, I'm afraid I cannot keep it. The next day when Sheriel woke up and saw the pendant her mother left, she suddenly seemed to understand something and began calling for the nanny. As expected, the nanny had been replaced. She asked tearfully where the original nanny had gone. The new nanny coldly told her, I think you should have breakfast first. The Countess won't like seeing you in this state. Young Sheriel knew the Countess must have done something. She immediately wiped away her tears and went to see her, wanting to beg for the Countess's forgiveness. As soon as she reached the meeting hall, she immediately knelt before the Countess and apologized. It's all my fault. Please give her back to me. The Countess responded mercilessly. What have I taken from you? Do you miss your mother so much? I heard the Roperam family in the north needs servants, so I sent her there. Don't be so sad. I plan to visit where she works in summer. Would you like to come with me? The Count added from the side. You can take this opportunity to visit the Roperam family. His son is still a young boy. Hopefully you can catch his attention. Use your face to seduce him. This is also repayment for us raising you. After the memory ended, the Count was still talking to himself. If you don't want your husband to know about your background. Sheriel retorted that Kian wouldn't care about such things. Then what if you knew he was the son of your mother's murderer? The Count continued threatening her with her mother's grave. "You'd better obey my orders. If anything happens to your mother's grave because of this, I think she would be very sad." Sheriel hadn't expected him to be so vile, thinking that perhaps he had threatened the original owner this way before, which led to her ending up in such a state. But now she would no longer be threatened by his words. She curtly asked him to leave. The guards immediately entered and directly restrained him. Karthizel also rushed in anxiously to check on her condition. At night, he specially brought a teddy bear to cheer her up. Sheriel was touched by his effort to comfort her, so she agreed to his request to sleep together. Seeing Karthizel's obedient manner, she thought about how much her previous coldness must have hurt him, and asked if he hate her. He lowered his head and was silent for a moment and replied, "I did many things before, but you never gave me a hug. But Mom, even though you were cold, I still liked you. Back then I just wished you would give me a smile. Suddenly you started smiling at me, although I was angry at first, but later I wasn't, because I really, really love you." Sheriel hugged her adorable son. Actually, when talking with the Count earlier, she had remembered everything. She even saw that winter witch. At that time, she held her mother's only memento, begging the witch to let her go back to see her mother. Unexpectedly, the witch refused the request and offered to give her 10 years. At that time, she believed that without her mother, even having time to live was meaningless. The witch laughed, believing Sheriel was lying, and wanted to make a bet with her. "If you're so confident, then you surely won't lose. I'll give you a new life without any cost. A life where you can be peacefully loved. You won't live in sadness and pain. What do you think?" Sheriel looked at the son in her arms, remembering how painfully she lived each day in the past, to the point of being unable to bear it, so she wondered if she could change everything and return to her mother's side. But now she couldn't do that, or Karthizel's fate would become tragic. Before, she thought the torn wings mentioned in the novel referred to the heroine imprisoned. But that wasn't the case. The one whose wings were truly torn off was Karthizel, and the culprit behind this was her. At the same time, Sheriel realized she hadn't transmigrated. It had been her all along. Now that she remembered everything, it was time to end the bet with the witch. Sheriel knew she would never be like before, because her husband and son were still waiting and loving her. From now on, she would let them know how much she loved them. After handling matters on the battlefield, Kian's first thought was to rush home. He feared Sheriel might be harmed by the Count. The clever knights advised him not to hurry back. Coming from so far without bringing gifts would surely disappoint his wife. Only then did he remember about buying gifts. He quickly headed to the nearby market. Moments later, he returned under everyone's gaze. After buying a bag full of jewelry, he still felt nothing was suitable for Sheriel. The knights were all worried he would return empty-handed. That's when he noticed a flower stand by the road. He bought all the purple hydrangeas on display, and then led everyone back without stopping. He was still anxious, fearing Sheriel had regained her memories, and would no longer welcome him like before. However, reality proved different. They were all waiting early at the door. Seeing his return, Sheriel immediately came forward to express how much she missed him. Karthizel also rushed to welcome him. When hearing Dad asked him if he protect Mom well while he was away, Karthizel didn't know how to explain. Sheriel quickly helped. "Of course he did. He protected me like a knight the whole time." "Kian, what are you holding in your hands?" He shyly said they were gifts for her. After returning, the maid arranged all the flowers in vases. Looking at the flowers, Sheriel suddenly became worried. She asked the maid what she would do if caught in a distorted relationship where neither she nor her partner was at fault. The maid replied, "I think it depends on the situation. If it's a problem that can be solved, I would try my best. If it can't be solved, I would cut it off." Sheriel also thought her words made sense, but she still wanted to resolve things. At this point, the maid seemed to guess something and asked if she had recovered her memories. Sheriel didn't plan to hide it, directly saying she remembered everything after the Count came. The maid became extremely angry. That evil Count came all this way just to torment Madame. That's why the memories returned. "I must find the holy water quickly. We must eliminate the evil energy left by that wicked Count." Sheriel asked why she wasn't worried about her regaining memories, but was instead angrier at her father. The maid became even more furious, of course. "I can't imagine how many awful things she said to help you recover your memories. It must have been a huge shock for you. I was indeed worried you would return to your previous self after regaining memories. But your eyes used to be empty and cold. Now they're full of warmth and love. Just as you said before, even with your memories back, you won't change." After saying this, she prepared to do a deep cleaning of the house. Sheriel watched her leave helplessly. Looking at the flowers, she thought of Kian again. At evening, after putting Karthizel to bed, she prepared to return to her room to wait for Kian. Unexpectedly, she found him sitting on the bed. "I just returned from the battlefield. Even someone as strong as me can't work constantly. I missed you every day and was longed to see you." Sheriel told him to stop saying such shameful words. She stroked his cheek and continued speaking. "I want to tell you something very important. That is, I remember everything." Kian had suspected it after hearing reports from the servants. He asked what they had discussed. Sheriel replied that the Count came asking for money. He couldn't believe he had come asking for money again. "From now on, I won't let him bully you anymore. I can't bear to see you suffer because of him. If I still have a chance. Sheriel felt his hands trembling as he spoke. I'm sorry. I don't want to see you hate me like before. Sheriel understandingly held his hands and comforted. Do you see any hatred in my eyes when I look at you now? Even though I remember everything, my heart will never change. Seeing her declaration, Kian finally felt reassured enough to ask for forgiveness. I'm not only the son of your mother's murderer, but I also forced you to be with me. Can you forgive me? His words made Sheriel recall her childhood memories. The Countess had promised to take her to visit the Roperam family, where she might see her mother who worked as a maid. But if you embarrass me, you won't have the chance. As punishment for your previous behavior, stay in your room without food until tomorrow. Sheriel realized that she would go hungry again, but being able to see Mom was already the greatest comfort. The next day, the Countess took her to the Roperam family. It was also her first time meeting Kian. The ladies needed to talk, so they sent the children away. Sheriel was overjoyed as it meant she could look for her mother. But not knowing where her mother was, she had to gather her courage to ask Kian whether he heard of a maid called Sienna. He knew the maid but didn't plan to tell her directly, because he couldn't reveal any private information about the Roperam family to anyone, but it didn't stump Sheriel at all. She asked him to give her a tour instead of telling her. Kian hadn't expected this approach. He could only reluctantly become her guide. To his surprise, she came again a few days later. Last time we went to the lake in the back garden, it was too big. Today let's look at the other side. Several times in a row, he patiently strolled around with her every time. Finally, it was Sheriel who grew impatient and asked him to directly tell her where the maid was. But Kian didn't understand why she was so insistent on seeing a maid. She didn't know how to explain because she could hardly say that was her mother. So she just told him, "She used to be my nanny and I missed her." Hearing this, Kian finally relented and told her that it's the maid's break time now and who she found should be nearby. Sheriel was so excited she actually tripped, earning his merciless laughter. But Kian still helped clean the mud off her dress and reminded her to be more careful next time. Then they headed to the resting area of maids, and Sheriel finally saw her mother. Sienna was very shocked to see her, frantically trying to hide her wounds. In order to prevent her from worrying, Sienna made an excuse that she needed to work and sent her away. But after that, she frequently went to see her mother. Eventually, she discovered her mother's injuries. In panic, the only thing she could think of was to beg the Duchess. But what she received was a cold response. That maid already belongs to the property of the Roperam family. Why should I call a doctor for a lowly maid? What made Sheriel more desperate was the wounds on her mother were all caused by the Duchess. That's when she realized the deception of the Countess. Kian had known about all this too. Thinking back to the past, her tears fell involuntarily. Kian hurriedly wiped away her tears and apologized. Sheriel gestured for him to sit beside her, saying, "I suddenly remembered many things from childhood. Do you know what my first impression of you was? Actually, when I first met you, I thought you were very unfriendly because you kept refusing to tell me where my mother was. But I was very happy being with you. I liked you since I was little." Kian also eagerly expressed his feelings. "Me too. Every time you smiled at me, my heart would race. However, I kept refusing to tell you where the maid was, even though I knew she was suffering from my mother's anger and torture. I deeply regret my judgment as a child. Perhaps if I had told you earlier, we could have saved her. I ultimately caused you to become a child who lost your mother." She knew that Kian had no power to do anything as a child, and might even have been beaten by the Duchess for it. So she tried to comfort him. "I shouldn't have blamed the mistakes on you either. I'm sorry I was too harsh on you before. You don't need to apologize to me anymore. I've always loved you." Meanwhile, hoping for a younger sibling, Karthizel could only talk quietly with his stuffed animal. "I told you I was going to see Mom. Why won't you let me go? Mom would always come to see me even when she was sick. Something must have happened for her not to come." He held his stuffed animal with a worried expression. Could it be that Mom is unhappy because Dad returned? Then he immediately dismissed this reason. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Karthizel excitedly ran out thinking it was Mother, but it turned out to be the maid. He immediately became unhappy. "Why is it you?" The maid explained she came to check if he was sleeping. He asked her to leave because he could manage on his own. The maid knew he was upset about not seeing his mother. Karthizel blushed and denied it. "Young master, I want to tell you a secret, and I'm only telling this to you. Madam is preparing a wonderful gift for you." Karthizel immediately raised interest in what kind of present. The maid deliberately built suspense. "Although Madam told me not to tell anyone, I can secretly tell you. Your mom wants to give you a little brother." He kept asking in disbelief if this was true, remembering his promise to Dad that he could refrain from sleeping with Mom for a sibling. When she heard he wanted to find Madam now, she quickly made up a story. A special bird needs to come to deliver babies, and when a couple gets along well, that bird will visit them. But the bird doesn't easily give babies. This special bird is very sensitive and will only come at night until morning. If the bird flies away, they won't have a child. Karthizel innocently believed the story. "I promised Father I wanted a brother, and now I know Mother didn't stay away because she didn't like me. So I can endure for a little while." The maid then took him to bed. The next day, Sheriel felt sore all over. She didn't notice Kian's sudden arrival, and was startled badly again. Kian indicated that he got worried when he heard she wasn't feeling well. Lying on the table, Sheriel asked if he was really busy today. He looked at her fondly. "Nothing is more important to me than you. But I want to know what the Count said to you that day." Sheriel replied, "He said if I didn't give him funds, he would tell you about my commoner birth. But you already know about my past. When I was little, I told you Sienna wasn't my nanny but my mother." Kian hadn't expected the Count to use this to threaten her. Shell continued, "I had no choice because he threatened to destroy my mother's grave. He kept threatening me with this, though I planned to refuse him from the start. For a long time, I wanted to escape from him. Before marriage, I often suffered his abuse. Most of the time, he would let me starve and sometimes even use violence." Hearing this, Kian held her close with sympathy. "I started blaming everything on you because of your coming late and your mother's doing. I hated you at that time. I'm sorry I hurt you, but now I hope you and Karthizel can forgive me." He comforted her that everything was fine now because everyone who loved her were by her side. And then Kian continued to say one more thing that he wanted to tell her. That was, he knew where her mother was buried. Kian had always felt guilty about not being able to save Sienna when he was young, so he later gave her an honorable burial. Sheriel never expected that her mother would be treated with such respect after death, and she also realized that the Count had been deceiving her all along. Kian had been hesitant to tell her earlier because he worried she wouldn't believe it. Sheriel was deeply moved by his silent dedication. After all, he was just a child back then. In fact, when Kian was young, he was often beaten and scolded by his mother, so he felt that her appearance was like a ray of light. She saved him from his tragic and lonely childhood. Meanwhile, things weren't going well for the Count. His nephew barged into his home. The Count angrily tried to drive him out, but to no avail. The nephew made it clear he wasn't after the Count's position. He would take good care of the Count because he had taken money from Kian. Then he called in the guards to bind the Count. Abby said coldly, "It is the price you pay for your greed and taking advantage of others. Don't worry, I'll dump you deep in the forest and make your death look like a carriage accident." The Count never imagined this would be his final fate. A few days later, Sheriel recovered her health. The maid excitedly brought out a letter from Viscountess Fornell. Sheriel eagerly opened the letter. After reading it, she had a serious expression. She told the maid, "I think we have some important preparations to make. A very lovely child will be visiting." The maid immediately guessed it was Viscountess Fornell's daughter. Sheriel kept telling her how adorable Rhea was. The maid excitedly said she would prepare the best pastries and tea. However, she wondered why both Viscountess Fornell and Rhea called the lady Madame Fairy in the letter. Sheriel felt quite embarrassed. When she was young, she had also always hoped for a fairy to come save her, but that wish never came true. She was happy that she could help fulfill Rhea's wish. Although fairies don't really exist, there are people who, like fairies, don't want others to suffer. Sheriel looked at the sky outside the window. "Mom, I miss you, but it will still be a long time before we meet. I need to take care of my child and husband first. They are the ones I love most. So Mom, please wait a little longer." A few days later, Sheriel dressed up Karthizel early in the morning. She instructed him that 2 very important guests would be arriving. She already envisioned how the children's meeting would unfold in her mind. Although their encounter in the original novel wasn't pleasant, many things had changed this time. She knelt down and said to Karthizel, "Soon, a little girl about your age will be here. Can you take good care of her?" When Karthizel heard it was a girl, he looked a bit scared, mumbling quietly that girls were troublesome. Sheriel made him promise to be nice to Rhea. He obediently linked his pinky with hers, as he had never broken a promise to his mother. Sheriel happily promised to make his favorite walnut pie afterward. His eyes immediately lit up, and he guaranteed he would keep his word. Soon, Viscountess Fornell arrived. Rhea held her mother's hand as she stepped down from the carriage. Seeing this scene, Sheriel and the maid couldn't help but internally exclaim how adorable Rhea was. As soon as Rhea saw Sheriel, she called out Madame Fairy. Upon hearing this, the servants began to speculate if it was because their lady was as beautiful as a fairy. Sheriel quickly asked Rhea not to call her fairy anymore. Rhea hurriedly covered her mouth and explained she didn't mean to expose her identity. Sheriel was completely charmed by her innocent adorableness. At this moment, Karthizel stepped forward and told Rhea to stay away from Sheriel. He said sternly, "She's not your fairy, she's my mother. Please don't cause her trouble." This was completely different from the heartwarming scene Sheriel had imagined. She turned to congratulate Viscountess Fornell on looking much better than last time. Viscountess Fornell expressed her gratitude for Sheriel's help, and taught Rhea to politely greet others before speaking. The well-behaved Rhea immediately curtsied politely to everyone. Moreover, she immediately apologized to Karthizel. "I understand how you feel, young master. Can you forgive me?" Karthizel replied, "It's all right, you've already apologized to Mom. I'm sorry I scared you when I was supposed to take care of you as I promised Mother." Upon hearing this, Rhea happily grabbed his hand and said, "I'm so glad you're my second friend. I'm sure we'll have lots of fun today." Although Karthizel appeared displeased about her holding his hand, he ultimately didn't pull away. Sheriel saw through his thoughts. She suggested he show Rhea around the Roperam house. Watching their retreating figures, Sheriel knew he liked Rhea. Considering Viscountess Fornell might have many questions to ask her, Sheriel suggested they go to the meeting hall. Upon arrival, Viscountess Fornell first expressed her gratitude to Sheriel. Her dream was to see Rhea grow up. but her health was deteriorating day by day. Thanks to the flowers Sheriel sent, she was still able to go out with her daughter like this. Thinking of the previous life, Sheriel knew Viscountess Fornell was also someone who deeply loved her child. So she smiled and said that if others knew about this, they would help too. Viscountess Fornell was puzzled about how Sheriel knew of her illness. As to outsiders, she merely appeared weak. Actually, in the novel, Rhea had contracted the same illness as her mother. Karthizel had traversed the entire continent to find a cure for her, but she couldn't reveal this. So Sheriel made up an excuse on the spot. You don't look naturally frail. It seems more like some kind of illness. I happen to hear that moonflowers can remove toxins from the body. The Countess Fornell thanked Sheriel for giving her renewed hope for life and the chance to grow alongside her daughter. Meanwhile, Karthizel and Rhea had arrived at the courtyard. Rhea followed behind, chattering continuously. The constant questions made Karthizel somewhat irritated, but he still led her to his secret spot for eating sweets. The servants had made thorough preparations. Seeing them sit down, they immediately served tea and cakes. Rhea was very interested in the desserts before her. She eagerly picked up a strawberry cake to taste. Karthizel sat quietly watching from across the table, thinking to himself that Rhea was quite cute when she was quiet. Then he noticed the crumbs at the corner of her mouth. Like a gentleman, he offered her his handkerchief. Rhea only then realized her lack of manners. Karthizel quickly consoled her, saying they were both children and didn't need to act like adults. Rhea was also touched by this boy who appeared cold on the outside but was gentle inside. She thought he was as kind as Madame Fairy. Karthizel blushed. He was quite pleased with the comparison to as mom, thinking she had good judgment and was innocent and pure. But in the next moment, he wanted to take back his previous thoughts because she said, "You're my only friend my age besides Ladius. Her mother and my mother are good friends, we often meet. Ladius is very kind. I really enjoy playing with him." These words made Karthizel very displeased, and he asked if she said she liked everyone she met. She explained that she didn't tell everyone she liked them. She just found it fun being with Ladius. Her sweet smile instantly captivated Karthizel, but it also made him angrier inside, because Rhea said she preferred being with Ladius. Rhea, finally sensing his unhappiness, tried to comfort him by patting his head. Although Karthizel appeared very composed as he rejected her comfort, his heart was in turmoil. He had actually already fully accepted her as a friend. Rhea suddenly leaned close to ask why he didn't just call her by name. Karthizel called her name with a red face. The maid watching from afar was also very happy to see them getting along so well. By then the two children noticed it was getting late, so Rhea directly pulled Karthizel along as they ran to find their mothers. Soon it was time to say goodbye. Rhea asked Karthizel if she could come play with him again. Karthizel's answer was also unexpected. "I'll have the chef prepare strawberry cake waiting for you." This put Sheriel's mind at ease. It seemed the future events from the story wouldn't happen now. A few days later, Sheriel was awakened early from her sleep. Looking out the window, she saw the maid and Karthizel holding holy water, though she wasn't sure what they were doing. Suddenly, she remembered what the maid had said earlier. She couldn't believe they were actually spraying holy water everywhere. Although the Roperam family was wealthy, this seemed too wasteful, so she decided to stop them. The guard was surprised to see the lady up so early. Sheriel explained she was woken by the commotion outside and came to see what was happening. The guard took out a small bottle of holy water and explained they were using it for a grand cleaning. Sheriel saw the empty bottle and knew he had participated too. The guard said they couldn't let anything bad happen to their lady. Although he wasn't sure if this counted as wasting money, he would still do it. Touched by their kindness, Sheriel asked if they had any extra holy water. The guard thought she wanted to participate too. Sheriel denied this, saying she just didn't want to see such expensive holy water wasted on the floor. Understanding her meaning, the guard agreed to send the remaining holy water to Sheriel's room. Seeing how enthusiastic the maid and Karthizel were about this task, Sheriel planned to slip away quickly, afraid they would see her and drag her to join in. Suddenly, she touched her empty neck, remembering she hadn't worn the necklace her mother had given her for a long time. She remembered trading the necklace with the witch, but her memories of the specifics were still fuzzy. For some reason, she felt her life shouldn't be this happy. Suddenly, Kian's appearance interrupted her thoughts. Kian explained he was about to head out for some business. He caressed her cheek and asked if something was troubling her, and told her she didn't need to bear everything alone. She could tell him about anything. But Sheriel didn't want to worry him about her memory issues, so she instead complained that she didn't like the way he called her. "I recently met a noblewoman whose husband never calls her directly by name." Kian paused for a few seconds. He immediately understood and asked what kind of nickname she would like. Sheriel blushed and suggested, like darling, or sweetheart, or baby. "I want to have pet names between us like Viscountess Fornell does with her husband." Kian said his didn't matter, telling her to just call him Kian. It was when she remembered Kian was already a nickname, so she blushed and asked Kian to call her darling. The next second he naturally called her darling. She couldn't believe he could say such an embarrassing term so easily without blushing. While she herself felt very awkward, that's when she remembered he had work to attend to. But Kian said it was fine, he could handle it later. So, after their talk, they agreed to visit her mother's grave in a few days. A few days later, they went to the cemetery together. Karthizel wondered where they were going today. Seeing his mother's sad expression, he asked if the person they were visiting would be as troublesome as his grandfather. Sheriel explained, "No, she is very precious to me." Karthizel seemed to understand and didn't ask her any more questions. Later they arrived at their destination. Sheriel looked at the cemetery where her mother rested, knowing Kian had taken great care to maintain it. She rushed to her mother's gravestone. Kian appropriately gave her some private space, taking Karthizel to stroll in the nearby forest. Karthizel didn't understand why they still hadn't met the person they came to see. Kian explained to him, "This might be a bit hard for you to understand, since you're still a child." Karthizel was very dissatisfied with his father treating him like a child, stating that he was the family heir and could learn and understand. Kian patted his head, saying this reaction still proved how young he was. Karthizel looked up and asked when they could go back to find Mother. Kian explained they needed to wait a while because Mother still needed some time. Karthizel continued asking if grandfather would come back since he had been so mean to Mother. Kian assured him and promised the Count wouldn't come to their home again, because he had passed away, but Mother didn't know about this yet, so we should keep it a secret from her. Karthizel said proudly, "I understand, I'll keep it secret. If Mother ends up hating you again for something, I'll be in a difficult position. After all, that special bird will bring my younger siblings, but only if the couple is very much in love." These words greatly confused Kian. Karthizel continued seriously warning him not to argue with Mother anymore, or else he wouldn't get any siblings. Kian finally realized the maids must have said something. At that moment, the sky suddenly began drizzling. Sheriel also met with her mother again. "Mom, it's been a long time. I have my own child now. In the past, you were always the one I loved most, but now many people love me, so I'm going to live a new life. I'm sorry it took so long to visit you, but I still love you very much." As the rain began falling harder, Karthizel quickly ran over concerned about his mother, but he saw her slightly reddened eyes. To avoid worrying him, Sheriel claimed it was just from the rain. Karthizel quickly said, "Then let's hurry home now." Sheriel replied, "All right, but before that, could you express your respects to her? Tell her you're my beloved son." Karthizel looked at the gravestone puzzled and said, "But there's no one there." Sheriel explained, "Because she's gone traveling to a faraway star." He indicated understanding and began thinking about what to say. "Hello, I'm Mother's most beloved son. My name is Karthizel, and I will become a powerful duke than father in the future." Meanwhile, Kian put a raincoat on him while saying, "It seems my son is very ambitious, but before that, you need to take care of yourself." He then put another raincoat on Sheriel and asked if she was feeling better, then turned to the gravestone and promised, "From now on, I will surely make her the happiest person. You don't need to worry, rest in peace." Seeing his demeanor, Sheriel could tell he must speak to her mother every time he visits. She took her husband's and son's hands to make introductions. "Mom, look, this is my adorable son, and this is my beloved husband. We've come together today to visit you. I'm living a happy life now, smiling joyfully every day. So don't worry, rest well. I'll come visit you often." That evening when Sheriel returned to her room, she felt unusually cold. Thinking she was just tired, she soon fell asleep. In her dreams, she came to an ice and snow-covered world. She turned and saw the long-lost pendant. Looking up further, she saw her past self, holding the pendant and begging the witch to let her see her mother again. The Winter Witch said, "I'm very sorry, but I can't do that because your mother is dead, but I can turn back time by 10 years. Sheriel felt that even turning back time would be meaningless if she couldn't see her mother. But unexpectedly, the witch called it a lie. "Why would I lie? I heard the Winter Witch knows everything, but perhaps it's false." The witch countered, "Then shall we make a bet, to see if everything is as you say, or are you the liar? I will give you a new life. If things are truly as you say, then you won't lose. The people will love you. Would you like to try? Perhaps you can't live with your mother, but you can enjoy a life filled with love." Sheriel finally agreed to this wager. "Okay, let's make this bet. I will give you a different life, though I won't erase your previous memories. To prove my omniscience, and to prove that forgetting the past can bring happiness, I'll give you a choice. Would you rather live carefree and happy, or recover your memories and return to being the original Sheriel? If you still want to live as Sheriel, that proves I've won this bet." Sheriel firmly believed that once she started her new life, she would surely give up her original identity, and was confident she would win. In the end, the witch took the pendant as collateral for the bet. Suddenly, Sheriel awoke from her dream. She didn't know what this dream meant. If she chose to continue living as Sheriel again, what price would she have to pay? Ever since that dream, Sheriel had been constantly searching for information about the Winter Witch. The maid also noticed she spent every day in the library and asked what she was looking for. Upon hearing she was searching for books about the Winter Witch, the maid suggested she might want to check the underground library. Sheriel had never heard of this place before. The maid explained she had heard about it from her mother, who was the previous duke's personal maid. Back then, she often saw the previous duke going to the basement late at night. Rumor had it that precious artifacts of the duke's family were stored there. The maid thought that since it was a private library, it must contain information not available here. Sheriel agreed her reasoning made sense. The maid wondered why she was suddenly interested in the Winter Witch. Suddenly, she had a bold idea. "Madam, could it be that you're trying to bring another young lady to the mansion?" Sheriel hadn't expected her imagination to be so rich. After hesitating for a while, Sheriel still came to the office door. As she was thinking about how to begin, Kian opened the door. Sheriel asked if he had time to talk. Kian agreed to her request under his assistant's resentful gaze. The assistant could only carefully remind them that there were still many official documents awaiting approval, but he hadn't expected his master to not only hand over all the work to him, but also display affection in front of him. In despair, he could only wish them to have fun. So Kian carried Sheriel all the way to the forest. After setting her down, he said, "We used to come here often as children. Do you remember? The air here is very fresh. Do you know how to ride?" Sheriel said her father never allowed it when she was young, so a while later, he rode back with a horse and helped her up onto it. Then they rode together through the forest. Kian also promised to make time to teach her horseback riding. Before they knew it, they had reached the lakeside. This also reminded Sheriel of childhood memories. They had run very far chasing after a bird. As the running, Kian's face grew increasingly pale. Sheriel discovered his back was covered in blood. He explained it was just a wound that had reopened. Not knowing the truth, she immediately wanted to tell the Duchess, but was told these scars were inflicted by the Duchess herself. Sheriel could hardly believe this was something a birth mother would do. Since she now knew his secret, she felt she should share one in return. So she told him about how that maid was her birth mother. Sheriel had never forgotten their childhood promise, that they would live happily together forever. But after that, they never saw each other again. Kian deeply regretted not telling her everything during that time. Otherwise, their relationship wouldn't have deteriorated so much. Sheriel told him that her past self just wanted to vent. She was very sorry for hurting him so much before, and their young son. No matter how many times she apologized, it never felt enough. Kian quickly consoled her that those were all things of the past. Sheriel expressed that she had been very happy lately and didn't want that happiness taken away. He didn't understand why she would worry about such things. "Because I've already ruined someone's life." Sheriel asked if he knew about the Winter Witch's story. Kian was surprised by her sudden question. Sheriel decided to tell him the truth, not wanting to keep anything from him. "Actually, I made a bet with the Winter Witch, betting whether or not I was lying. Have you ever thought that we might be unhappy together in the future?" Kian admitted he had never thought about it because he had always wanted to live happily with her. "But I know such a future exists because I've already lived through that life. In the end, neither of us achieved a satisfactory ending. I ruined your life." After saying this, Sheriel became nervous, afraid he wouldn't believe her words. The next moment, Kian embraced her and asked what her past life was like. That's when Sheriel finally relaxed, certain she wouldn't have to face things alone anymore. So she continued, "I love you very much, but I can't tell you. Before I didn't believe I deserved happiness. The first time I met the Winter Witch, I begged her to let me see my mother. But she could only send me back 10 years and thought I was lying. I believed I wasn't lying, so I made a bet with her. I chose to live with you and Karthizel to make up for my previous mistakes. You are both such precious existences to me. I lied, so I lost. The witch will come to take me away soon." Kian held her and told her the witch wouldn't do that. Sheriel thought he was just speaking hastily. Kian suddenly asked her whether she knew why he became the heir to the Roperam family. Sheriel was puzzled. "Wasn't it because you were born with the power all heirs of the Roperam family possess?" Kian continued, "My mother was once a witch. After she gave birth to me, she suddenly gained the title of Duchess." Sheriel remembered the Duchess had died of an incurable disease. "As you might guess, my mother made a bet with the Winter Witch, aiming to become the Duchess." Sheriel asked if the price of the Duchess's bet was her life. Kian denied this. "No, her illness was incurable. The Winter Witch only came to find me on the day she died, telling me she had come to collect the price. It was that I would never find happiness." He was sad that despite being so unfortunate already, the witch still wanted to take away his hard-earned happiness, so he wouldn't allow such a thing to happen again. When they returned home, they saw an angry Karthizel. "Where did you and father go? Why didn't you take me along?" Sheriel quickly explained they just went to get some fresh air. If they did anything fun, they would definitely bring him along, and if he didn't believe her, he could ask his father. So he turned to ask, "Father, where did you go?" Kian responded awkwardly, "Just as mother said, we were just walking nearby. Besides, weren't you in class then? We only left for a while. Don't be angry that we didn't take you." These words only made Karthizel more unhappy. "But you take mother out every day. Don't you know I've been holding back from visiting mother because I'm waiting for that special bird? You're really too much." Hearing this, Sheriel felt embarrassed and blamed her husband for not explaining things clearly to their son. But then came another soul-searching question from Karthizel. "When will that special bird bring me a gift? Father promised me. He said the bird would bring me a brother or sister. Mother, you also said you'd give me any gift I wanted. I've always looked forward to being a good big brother." Sheriel could only promise she would do her best. His eyes immediately lit up. Sheriel quickly changed the subject, asking what kind of dessert he wanted for his upcoming birthday. It successfully diverted his attention. "Can you make me a big cake?" Sheriel hugged him and replied, "Of course, I've already thought about how to decorate it." "And before your birthday, would you like to travel south with mother?" Then Kian said he would make time to join them. Unexpectedly, Sheriel played a trick. "I think father must be very busy. This will be just a mother-son trip. This is punishment for hiding the truth about that bird." Karthizel stood by, gloating. Early the next morning, Kian found Sheriel. He had found a book about the Winter Witch in the underground library, which was more detailed than the fairy tale books. and he told Sheriel she could ask him for help with anything. He would gladly do anything for her. Then he went to work. After Sheriel reluctantly bid farewell to her husband, she began reading the book he brought, which recorded the witch's preferences and personality. It seemed to be written by a family familiar with the witch. The witch often fulfilled others' wishes out of boredom with life. To her, these were merely games. With a lucky mentality, Sheriel thought perhaps the witch granted wishes because she wanted to see someone's fate completely changed. Sheriel thought that worrying endlessly wouldn't help. Right now, Karthizel's birthday was more important. As she was thinking, she suddenly felt tired and fell asleep at the table. Unexpectedly, in her dream, she met the witch again. "Sheriel, long time no see, do you remember me? You should know why I've come to find you, right?" Sheriel knew the witch must have come to claim her price. "Oh my, with that expression, others might think I'm the villain. What I took was a fair price," she said. Then she returned the necklace to Sheriel, but she still wouldn't say what price she wanted, and asked Sheriel if she thought her current happiness would be the price. "I came to tell you that I cannot yet claim my price from you, but I will come before this winter ends. Don't worry too much. I'm happy to see your fate now, and I want to give you a good opportunity. In return, I think you should be nicer to me. Rather than me, you should worry about other things, because your changed fate might slip away." Sheriel kept pondering the witch's final words after waking up, but in her memory, nothing major had happened in the empire. Kian guarded the north, thus territorial disputes and invasions by outsiders were easily suppressed. She really couldn't think of any possibilities. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the maid's calls. "Madam, I wanted to tell you the carriage is ready. Didn't you have a tea appointment with several ladies today?" Only then did she remember about that. She immediately asked where Karthizel was, hearing that he was already waiting by the carriage. Sheriel hurried over. Karthizel was waiting at the entrance. Sheriel crouched down to apologize. "I'm sorry, Mom forgot to remind you. You're not angry with Mom, are you?" He quickly said he wasn't. "Then why did you come here by yourself? Don't you usually come find Mom first?" Her words made Karthizel blush immediately. She instantly perceived his thoughts. Could it be you wanted to see Rhea quickly? Seeing his thoughts exposed, he frantically shook his head in denial, trying to cover up by pulling her quickly to the carriage. Sheriel couldn't help but think how adorable he was. In the carriage, Karthizel remained very nervous. He had promised Rhea he would prepare strawberry cake for their next meeting, but this time they weren't meeting at their house. Sheriel smiled and suggested they could arrange to meet at their house next time, so he could give Rhea cake directly. Karthizel looked very satisfied hearing this. That's when he noticed the new necklace she was wearing. She explained it was something very important to her and asked if he wanted to see it. Then she opened the necklace. Karthizel curiously asked who she was. Sheriel wasn't sure how to explain to him. She could only say she'd tell him when he grew up, so they made a promise about it. Just as they arrived at their destination, Sheriel noticed Lady Penzel was already there, while Karthizel was looking around as if searching for someone. Hearing his mother ask if he was looking for Rhea, he immediately denied it and said he didn't care where she was at all. Lady Penzel crouched down to tell him Rhea hadn't arrived yet, but Ladius was already waiting for him. Karthizel shyly explained he wasn't looking for Rhea. At this time, Ladius came over and politely greeted them. Karthizel complained, speaking of the devil. Ladius leaned in and asked, "Are you talking about me? I was preparing, so I came late. We haven't competed in a long time, but let's hold back today. After all, Rhea can't get hurt." So they agreed to get along peacefully. Sheriel was glad to see them make peace. That's when Lady Penzel noticed a carriage approaching behind them. Then they saw Viscountess Fornell arriving with Rhea. Rhea immediately ran to Sheriel. "Madam Fairy, all the dresses you sent me are so beautiful, I really had trouble choosing. How does this one look?" Sheriel happily looked at Rhea and praised her. "You look absolutely beautiful, like a spring flower. You look beautiful in any dress, there's no need to worry about which one to wear." Rhea was very happy hearing this. Sheriel reminded her that Karthizel and Ladius had been waiting for her. Only then did she hurriedly say goodbye to Sheriel, running and greeting them. Her way of running without watching the path made them very worried, and they called out in unison for her to be careful. Rhea happily stood on tiptoe to show she hadn't fallen. Only then did they breathe a sigh of relief. Rhea took their hands and said, "I believe the three of us will have a lot of fun today," then pulled them forward to run. Meanwhile, the ladies also sat down for their gathering. Lady Penzel mentioned she heard Sheriel was learning horseback riding lately. "Yes, I became interested after seeing my husband ride." Viscountess Fornell chimed in. "His Grace is so thoughtful, he seems willing to do anything for you." Sheriel blushed and replied, "Yes, he is very good." Her expression made both ladies exclaim in delight. They eagerly asked if she needed help with anything, seeing their enthusiasm. Sheriel asked them to help prepare Karthizel's birthday party. At the same time, the children were having their own lively discussion. Karthizel felt Ladius was being dismissive in answering Rhea's questions. Thinking back to how he had worried about what Ladius said before, Rhea mentioned she felt cold when leaving home this morning, then quickly turned to ask Karthizel if he was listening to her. Looking at Rhea with food all over her mouth, Karthizel responded that he was listening. While helping wipe the mess from her mouth, he asked if she went by Rhea as a nickname. Only then did she realize she had made a mess again. "Thank you, everyone usually calls me Rhea." Her adorable smile left Karthizel stunned. He even wished he could be the only one to see her smile. Then he remembered what his mother had said before. If you love something, you must cherish it. Don't try to possess it, but let it have its own wings. At the time, he had asked Mom, wouldn't it fly away if it had wings? But Mom had disagreed with his thinking, not necessarily. If you love something and give it freedom, if it comes back to you, that proves it loves you too. Don't try to express your love by caging it, but give it enough security. Treat it with your heart and it will return to you. Karthizel didn't know why he thought of these words. Then he heard Rhea asking him to call her by her nickname like everyone else. He was eager to agree in his heart, but he said no. When you become a lady who doesn't get food all over her face, then I'll call you that. Rhea was instantly dissatisfied and complained him meanie. Karthizel noticed ladies showed no interest in their conversation, but it was better. He only wanted Rhea to know his feelings. They continued discussing what to play later. Rhea said she usually goes to look at new flowers in the garden first, then enjoys sweets, cookies, and milk. The flowers are very beautiful and the cookies are delicious. That's why she likes coming to Ladius's home. Hearing her excited description, Karthizel turned to question Ladius. Ladius said he just needed to watch Rhea because she's cute. At this moment, Rhea's eyes lit up seeing the strawberry cake being served. I want to eat a super big strawberry cake on my birthday. The cake at the Duke's mentioned last time was good too. She turned to ask Ladius when his birthday was. Knowing it was in summer, she then turned her hopes to Karthizel. My birthday is in winter and it's coming soon. Rhea became very excited hearing this, because it meant she could have strawberry cake like last time. Karthizel promised he would send them invitations. On the other side, the mothers were also discussing the birthday party. Lady Penzel thought the birthday party should invite many people to attend. Viscountess Fornell strongly agreed. She had invited many people for Rhea's birthday, and Rhea was very happy then. They enthusiastically said, if you need help, we can contact other ladies. But Sheriel firmly declined the suggestion because Karthizel didn't like being around unfamiliar people. Lady Penzel and Viscountess Fornell said they must attend. After all, the children get along very well. Sheriel quickly said, of course, Karthizel would definitely like having friends at his birthday party. The two ladies said they would prepare things for the children to play with. Lady Penzel suddenly exclaimed, it's so nice to be able to live peacefully like this lately. This time of year usually is very unsettled. Sheriel curiously asked why. Because our territory often suffers from disputes. Thanks to his grace, our land hasn't fallen into chaos. I'm very grateful to have him protecting us, which is why we can enjoy leisurely afternoon tea moments. Sheriel thought about how Kian might be facing war and often going out to battle. She thought it was normal for him to go out before and had never even sent him off once, but he still did his best to protect her. Now she also wanted to do something to protect him. The other two ladies were also worried about the border situation. All three suddenly became depressed. Sheriel feared the price the witch mentioned might be related to Kian, so she worried especially when he went out. That's when Viscountess Fornell suggested they could send embroidery as gifts. Hearing Sheriel ask what she should embroider, both ladies said in unison, anything made with heart will do. It will be a symbol of your mutual love. Sheriel said she would think about it carefully. Later at evening, on their way back, Karthizel suddenly asked Sheriel how she and his father got married, which startled her, wondering why he would ask this. He continued, I remember Mom once said when you truly love something, you can't lock it up, but let it fly freely. If it loves me, it will return to my side. I want to know if that's how it was with father too. Sheriel told Karthizel her story. She thought marriage would be imprisonment, but later learned that Kian had always been quietly protecting her. After hearing this, Karthizel hoped he could become a nest for someone too someday. She hugged him and said, sure you can. No one would ever push you away. Soon they arrived at the mansion entrance, but the scene before her made her heart race. Seeing the serious faces of the servants at the door, she asked what had happened. Only then did the maid say the Count had met with an accident on his way. Sheriel asked if the accident left him severely injured. Seeing the hesitation of the maid, she remembered that in her previous life, this same incident happened, and the outcome was that they all died. Seeing Karthizel listening intently beside her, she didn't want to discuss these things in front of him, and perhaps the maid had hesitated for the same reason, so she decided to take Karthizel inside first, and told the maid she already knew what had happened, and would talk to Kian about it later. Kian found Sheriel still awake after handling official business. She explained she couldn't sleep. He asked if it was because of the Count's matter, and Sheriel nodded. When I heard the news of the Count's death, I wasn't sad at all. Isn't that strange? But I still pretended to be a kind mother, not telling Karthizel about his grandfather's death. He comforted her. Karthizel probably knows about this. In his eyes, the Count was the bad person who hurt his mother. You don't need to grieve for someone who hurt you. She knew Kian was behind this. Kian also admitted he didn't want the Count to hurt her anymore. Do you think what I did was despicable? Sheriel caressed his cheek and said, how could it be despicable? I just don't want you to dirty your hands for my sake. I truly hated the Count and his wife. They made me act like nothing happened after my mother's death. While I wished for their death every day, I was also afraid. That's why I never dared to resist, letting them manipulate me like a puppet. I'm afraid your hands will be stained with blood because of me. He told Sheriel not to worry, as he could do anything for her. But Sheriel didn't want him to get hurt. He replied it was all right and he was strong enough. But you go on expeditions every year at this time. Although you return acting like nothing happened every time, I know you must have gone through very dangerous moments. Now you're about to leave again, aren't you? Kian responded. To protect you and the territory, I have no choice. As your husband, protecting you is my responsibility. Don't worry, I'll return safely. The next day, the maids were chattering in the room about how the Count finally got what he deserved. Actually, I was more concerned about how Madame would view it. I didn't expect you to worry about him. Sheriel admitted she was happy hearing the news, but she couldn't show it. After all, he was her father. But now let's forget about him. I already have people who are very important to me. A week later, it was time for Kian to depart. The maid and Karthizel both loved the handkerchief Sheriel embroidered, believing Kian would surely be happy to receive it. Karthizel jealously said he wanted one too. Kian was already prepared to leave. He asked if they came to see him off. Sheriel and Karthizel said in unison, "Of course." He said he would return quickly and told them not to worry. Then Sheriel presented the handkerchief she had embroidered. Kian joyfully looked at the handkerchief in his hand. Sheriel said gently, "When I made it, I imagined a majestic wolf in the snow. It's very like you because you're more important to me than anything. So I give you this handkerchief, so you'll know there are people waiting at home. Don't get hurt, you must return safely." Kian stared at the handkerchief for a long time without speaking. Sheriel thought he didn't like it. He immediately said he would make it a family heirloom to pass down through generations. Sheriel shyly asked him why make it into a family heirloom. Because it contains your love and care, worth preserving. At this moment, Karthizel also came forward to hug his father. "You don't need to worry about mother, just return safely." Soon it was time to depart, and Kian mounted his horse, promising them, "I will definitely return safely, I know you're waiting for me." A few days later, Karthizel suddenly changed his mind about having a birthday party. No matter how Sheriel tried to persuade him, it was no use. He remained firm in his decision. Sheriel asked him why he changed his mind. It turned out he wanted both his father and mother present to bless him. But now his father was still away. Sheriel finally understood his thoughts and patted his head saying, "Karthizel, I understand how you feel. But father would surely want you to have a happy birthday surrounded by everyone. But father will definitely be sad about not being able to attend. Then what would you like to do on your birthday? Or where would you like to go? Mom can take you anywhere. It's fine if we don't have a birthday party. But we should at least celebrate. If father knows you didn't do anything for your birthday because of him, he would be very disappointed. Perhaps we could invite Ladius and Rhea to celebrate together." "Of course we can. Looks like you've become very good friends." At this point, Karthizel suddenly became hesitant, shyly telling Sheriel to put lots of strawberries on the cake. On his birthday, the whole mansion was busy with preparations. The maid directed everyone to decorate properly. Sheriel came out to ask how the cake was coming along. The maid said it would be ready soon, and mentioned that Karthizel had woken up very early. So Sheriel decided to find Karthizel first. Last birthday, their relationship wasn't this good. So many things had happened in just 1 year. At this moment, Karthizel came running from not far away. Sheriel put a birthday hat on him. "Why is mom congratulating me before the party starts?" "Because mom wanted to be the first to wish you well." "Is everything ready for the celebration?" "Almost everything. Let's change clothes before the guests arrive." "Mom prepared special clothes for your birthday." Karthizel was very excited hearing this. Sheriel and the maid were also looking forward to seeing how Karthizel would look. After he changed, he received endless praise from the maid, but he clearly wasn't happy. "Mom, why did you make me dress like this?" He stood at the door unhappily wearing the clothes Mom gave him. Sheriel amusedly apologized, seeing his pouting lips. "Mom, do you really feel sorry? Your expression looks suspicious." "Since it's my birthday, I'll reluctantly wear the gift you gave me." Sheriel said next time she would prepare something more suitable for him. He pouted and told her not to do this next time. Just then, the maid reported that guests had arrived. Lady Penzel and Viscountess Fornell arrived together. Ladius and Rhea followed closely behind. "Welcome everyone. I've prepared lots of food today. Would you like to play happily with Karthizel?" The little ones all happily expressed their willingness. Rhea directly flew over to give Karthizel a big hug and said happy birthday to him, which made him blush instantly. He asked her to step back a bit. Rhea didn't mind at all, pulling his hand to express her excitement. Ladius also came forward to present his prepared gift. That's when Rhea remembered she had forgotten her gift in the carriage. She couldn't hand her gift to Karthizel personally now. Karthizel returned the gifts to his room. Only then did Ladius notice Karthizel's attire today. "I'm curious about something. What's with these strange clothes you're wearing?" Karthizel was too shy to explain. Rhea eagerly raised her hand. I know. They are angel wings. They suit you very well." Ladius then teased, "If I had known you liked wings, I would have made that your gift." So the three started playing around in the hall. Viscountess Fornell quickly took out a memory orb to capture this moment. Sheriel and Lady Penzel were worried whether they could get along well. Lady Penzel smiled and said, "It's fine. They're all still children. I believe this will be a very interesting gathering." Soon it was time to eat. Everyone gave their blessings to Karthizel. Sheriel reminded him to respond to everyone's wishes. He thought for a moment and said, "Thank you very much for your congratulations. Although I haven't behaved well enough in front of you, I will work harder in the future." Hearing this, the servants all remarked how grown up he had become. Karthizel continued, "Thank you for coming," Rhea happily shouted. "Of course, we had to come wish you happy birthday. Do you like strawberry cake too? It looks really delicious." Karthizel thought of his favorite walnut pie, then thought of how Rhea's favorite was strawberry cake, and shyly said he liked strawberries. Rhea happily said they had many things in common. She really, really loved strawberries. Karthizel said he had prepared lots of strawberry cake for her to enjoy at the birthday party. These words caught Ladius's attention. He realized that Karthizel might like Rhea, but he couldn't have that because he didn't think he and Karthizel would have the same tastes. At this point, Sheriel asked Karthizel if he wanted to make a wish on the candles, but he wanted to do it later. He explained he wanted to ask her for a favor. Sheriel definitely said yes, whatever he needed. Actually, it's not a big deal. I want you to blow out the candles with me later tonight. Sheriel hadn't expected his request to be so simple, so she promised to blow out the candles with him in the evening. She turned around and said to everyone, Karthizel said he wanted to blow out the candles later. Let's eat first. I hope you can enjoy today's party. A moment later, everyone started praising today's dinner. Lady Penzel took out her memory orb. She had been recording each child since they started dinner. Viscountess Fornell looked at Rhea's eating manners, sighing that although her daughter was a year older than Karthizel and Ladius, she still seemed childlike. Lady Penzel quickly said, she's still just a child and is already doing very well. As for Ladius and Karthizel, they never want to lose to each other, so they eat very carefully. Sheriel also agreed with Lady Penzel's words. They are both friends and rivals. She felt somewhat regretful that she couldn't record their cute moments. Viscountess Fornell took out a memory orb she had prepared and said it was her gift to her. Sheriel hadn't expected to own a memory orb herself. Now she could record Karthizel's adorable moments in the future. Soon it was evening, and both ladies prepared to say goodbye. Karthizel was also ready to blow out the candles with his mother. It's still early, we can take our time, but I don't want to miss making a wish because time passes by. In that case, let's make a wish now. Karthizel solemnly made his wish looking at the cake before him. Please let my father return safely, and afterward we can travel to the south. She hadn't expected his wish to be this. Mom, you should say happy birthday. You're right, my beloved son, happy birthday. Meanwhile, Kian was in his camp devising the next strategy. The subordinate reported that the enemy had shown no movement all day. Kian speculated, if that's the case, are only foreigners from the borderlands invading once again? The subordinate also agreed, and he suspected it might be some political party that had bad relations with His Grace initiated a war. Kian didn't understand why he was always considered a traitor just because his bloodline wasn't pure. His mother had only brought him harm. Why did everyone want to kill him? He just wanted to protect his territory and family. He suddenly realized things couldn't be delayed any longer. If they tried to invade, not one could be left alive. If they wanted to use their lives to demand his death, then they should pay the price. Sheriel had been feeling very tired lately. She guessed it might be because she had been worrying about too many things. Hearing Karthizel had a new tutor recently, she asked the maid if it was true. The maid answered, yes, the previous tutor is heading south for winter, so we found a new tutor. Sheriel inquired about the new tutor's situation. The maid seemed somewhat troubled. To be honest, she looks kind, but there's something peculiar about her. Then she told Sheriel not to worry because all the servants welcomed her arrival. But her words still alerted Sheriel. You're the servant I trust most among all. I hope you won't hide anything. If you have suspicions, then watch the new tutor. So the maid took on this task. After the maid left, Sheriel quickly fell asleep. She saw her mother again in the dream. She confided her recent worries to her mother. She was very worried about Kian's safety, afraid of the witch coming to claim her price. And she hoped to have a daughter. She would surely give her countless love like her mother did. Her mother wiped away her tears and said she would come see her soon. Sheriel thought she had such a dream because she missed her mother too much. At this moment, the maid brought another bowl of collected sour fruits. While eating, she asked about the recent situation with the tutor. The maid replied, perhaps I was overthinking at first. Unlike other tutors, she treats young master just like a child his age. Sheriel didn't understand what she meant. The maid continued to explain, although young master is still young, he's the heir to the Roperam family. Most tutors would be very courteous. Despite her words, Sheriel still had concerns and decided to observe for herself. She had been curious about how Karthizel looked during classes anyway, and this would be a chance to see how each teacher was doing. Karthizel, who had just finished class, immediately came to find her. Mom, hold out your hand. She confusedly extended her hand. He put on the bracelet he had made himself. Did our sweet Karthizel make this? It's very beautiful. Mom will always wear it, thank you. When Daddy comes back, I want to show it off to him. Can Mom watch you having classes? Karthizel very happily agreed to her request and asked her to make sure to praise him when he did well. In the afternoon, Sheriel watched her son's classes from the side, watching Karthizel very seriously looking at the knowledge in the books. She couldn't help but think how adorable he looked when concentrating. Soon the first class was over, and next lesson was the new tutors. The new female teacher introduced herself as Bertol. She did look friendly, but her earrings caught Sheriel's attention. Seeing her friendly demeanor, Sheriel thought she was wary of her because of what the maid said earlier. Just then she heard Bertol excitedly saying how cute Karthizel was today. Afterward, Bertol realized it was inappropriate and quickly apologized to Sheriel. No need to apologize, you're just saying this because my son is so adorable, right? Yes, he's both adorable and talented. I hope I can continue to be his teacher. Sheriel was happy to see someone appreciate Karthizel so much. She also noticed her trembling and cold hands. Bertol explained that she had come here after receiving the recommendation letter, not knowing the winter would be so cold here. Sheriel immediately asked her maid to bring a warm garment. A moment later, Bertol was wearing thick clothes. She was very grateful for Sheriel's kindness. Then she began teaching Karthizel. Seeing their close interaction, Sheriel felt her concerns were unnecessary. At evening, when Bertol was returning home, it began snowing heavily. She couldn't help but think she would have frozen without the clothes given by Madame. Just as she entered, she saw a red-haired woman. It was Duchess Charity. She said, "I stopped by on my way home to check on you. Since I recommended you to the Duke's family, I naturally need to check if you've caused any inconvenience. It must be your first time in this region, right?" Bertol replied, "Yes. Madame is very considerate and arranged this house for me. Today when I was teaching, she came to the young master's room. She is so beautiful and considerate, which explains why the young master turned out so well. Usually children will cry and refuse to study. Some even hit me because they dislike studying, but he didn't say anything when he saw me, just wanted to start the lesson. He also mentioned he wanted to see his mother after finishing. So I showed him the gift I brought. I told him many such bracelets can be seen in my hometown, where people give bracelets to those they cherish." When the young master heard this, he silently noted it. After class, he stopped me, hoping I would teach him how to make that bracelet, because he wanted to give it to Madame. Today I saw Madame wearing the young master's bracelet, so I'm really grateful for the job you recommended. Duchess Charity suddenly laughed maniacally, saying viciously that she remembered a very unpleasant experience. At that time, she had spoken harshly to Sheriel. In the end, even her apology wasn't accepted. Now she had fallen to such a state. After calming down, she quickly grabbed Bertol and apologized. "I'm sorry I frightened you just now. You're trembling all over." Bertol looked at her somewhat fearfully and quickly stated she was just cold. Duchess Charity agreed. "Yes, the cold here is difficult to adapt to quickly. But you must really like those earrings, right?" Bertol touched her earrings while answering, "Yes, they are a precious gift from you, and you told me I must dress properly when going to the Duke's mansion. But I didn't have anything expensive to wear at that time, so thank you for giving me such a wonderful gift." Duchess Charity waved it off, saying it was nothing. "I hope you can continue to work after winter. I have one more thing I want to ask you. About His Grace who's gone on an expedition. Do you know when he'll return?" Faced with her inquiry, Bertol didn't know how to respond. "For a tutor like you, it's indeed difficult to know. I must leave now, but I hope next time I come you'll have an answer ready." Meanwhile, when the assistant came to deliver documents, he saw Sheriel was troubled and asked what was bothering her. She wanted to go out with Karthizel, but apart from visiting other nobles, she had hardly ever gone out alone. Considering the recent invasions, the assistant suggested she stay in the house. But if she really wanted to go out, he could help find some safe places. So she entrusted this task to him. A few days later, photos and introductions of various places were presented to Sheriel. The maid strongly recommended a particular place after seeing them. Karthizel said he would go anywhere as long as he was with Mom. Bertol couldn't help but comment that she didn't expect there were so many beautiful places in the north. She felt she had no right to help Sheriel select a travel destination. Sheriel told Bertol not to belittle herself, and she didn't expect anything in return, hoping her just continue to be a good teacher to Karthizel. Then Sheriel confirmed Karthizel's thoughts and told him to definitely speak up if there was a place he wanted to go. The maid loudly suggested they should definitely go to Central Plaza. Sheriel asked her why she recommended it so strongly. The maid explained it was a very beautiful and charming place. Children also liked going there because it had many interesting spots. Karthizel agreed, hoping to create fun memories with Mom there. Hearing he wanted to go, Sheriel definitely agreed. But Karthizel also wanted to go again with Father later. Of course, Father would return safely soon, and next year we could all go together. This time we go first, and later bring Father along, Sheriel said. She knew he was also worried about Kian. At this moment, Bertol took out a hairpin. "My father taught me from childhood that when you receive help from others, you should repay it. So I brought this hairpin with a purple crystal in the middle, like your eyes. I know it's not something precious, but I'd be happy if you would accept it." Feeling her sincere gratitude, Sheriel accepted it and wore it. "Karthizel, do you think it suits me?" Karthizel was very supportive. "Mother looks good wearing anything." That evening, Bertol happily returned home. She found Duchess Charity had come again, so she told her about the day's events and informed her that the madam planned to take the young master to Central Street. What Bertol didn't know was that behind her, a man was staring at her greedily. The next second, she was struck on the head. The man who attacked her told Duchess Charity they needed to start their plan soon. When Bertol woke up, she felt a headache and found her hands and feet were bound. Nearby, Duchess Charity and a man were conspiring about something. The man was concerned about Karthizel because he heard Karthizel had already awakened the power. Duchess Charity mocked him for being afraid of a 6-year-old child. He maintained that being cautious wasn't wrong, but she was already impatient to see Sheriel begging on her knees. "The tutor we sent to the Roperam family has been gathering information through the earrings. We've been biding our time until now, and it is the best time for revenge." Hearing this, Bertol finally realized they had been using her to steal intelligence from the Roperam family. Duchess Charity mercilessly yanked off Bertol's earrings and said to her, "I helped you find a job, so we've been helping each other. Thanks to you, I can now take my revenge. Before starting a new life, we need money, and I'm tired of the miserable lifestyle. So we plan to sell the heir of the Roperam family. Meanwhile, Sheriel was very worried about Bertel. Since receiving a letter saying she had a severe cold, there had been no news. The maid had sent a doctor, but they couldn't make contact. These days, Karthizel had also developed a fever from exhausting training. It seemed their planned trip to the plaza would have to be postponed. But to her surprise, Karthizel was already prepared. Sheriel arrived to find him all dressed up. "Mother, we're going out today, right? Didn't we agree to go to the plaza today?" Seeing his excitement, she could only caution him to tell her if he felt unwell. Karthizel happily agreed. Moments later, they arrived at the plaza. Seeing the crowded plaza, Sheriel told Karthizel to hold her hand tightly. But he had other thoughts. Before leaving, the maid had reminded him that his mother's birthday was approaching, suggesting he buy her a gift as a surprise. She also proposed having a knight hide him to take advantage of this opportunity to buy a gift. Seeing him looking ahead thoughtfully, Sheriel mistakenly considered he was interested in the hat shop ahead, so she suggested going inside. Inside, the cute hats all seemed to suit him, each one looking very adorable when worn. Karthizel, thinking of what the maid said before, made an excuse for Mom to get him that fluffy hat from inside, while seizing the opportunity to leave with the guard. To his surprise, the guard didn't keep up with him and was quickly left behind. The next second, he was picked up by a strange man. His consciousness gradually became foggy. Meanwhile, Sheriel was selecting hats and finally found a fluffy little chick hat. Imagining how Karthizel would look wearing it, she turned around to let him try it, but she couldn't find him anywhere. When she questioned the knight, she learned he had gone to buy something. It was a birthday gift for her. She had to pretend not to know and wait for the surprise. In the meantime, she bought many gifts for Karthizel, but after a long time, he still hadn't returned. That's when she saw the knight running back urgently and reporting that Karthizel had been taken away by an unidentified person. Sheriel immediately gathered all the knights to seal off the plaza, ordering them to find Karthizel immediately. She herself ran through the plaza searching, continually blaming herself for letting go of his hand. What if the witch's price was Karthizel? Suddenly, a light flared from one corner of the plaza. She immediately ran toward it, thinking it must be Karthizel's distress signal, but it turned out to be a trap set by the villains. Moments later, Sheriel was brought to a small house, only to discover that the person who kidnapped Karthizel was none other than Duchess Charity. Without a word, she started stomping on Sheriel. Seeing this scene, Karthizel became extremely anxious. Sheriel was still begging Duchess Charity to spare Karthizel. "It's not the Duchess who's valuable but the heir. Does it hurt to watch your beloved child disappear before your eyes?" Sheriel anxiously shouted, "Yes! It scares me to death. Are you happy now?" Duchess Charity laughed. "I didn't expect revenge would be so easy, but I should thank Bertel, that foolish tutor." Sheriel was confused about how she knew Bertel, but she didn't intend to explain. She then viciously continued to bully Sheriel. At this point, the man returned and stopped her, wanting to leave with Karthizel immediately. Karthizel looked at his mother lying on the ground, then fearfully began to cry loudly. Sheriel could only watch helplessly as he was carried away, just as her mother had once watched her. She kept praying, "Won't someone save Karthizel?" The hairpin on her head suddenly emitted light. The ropes on her body also loosened. They were shocked that Sheriel could use magic. Karthizel was magically brought back to Hearside. After checking that he wasn't injured, Sheriel was about to leave with him immediately, but seeing the severe injuries she had sustained, Karthizel suddenly mumbled it was all because of him. Sheriel noticed his hand becoming burning hot. Karthizel shook off her hand and shouted, "It's all because I acted on my own, when I had promised to listen to Mother. Now I'm a bad child. You'll probably hate me again." Sheriel quickly tried to comfort him, but he was now beyond hearing any words. The flames around him began to rage and surrounded the two villains. In an instant, the entire room was engulfed in flames. At this time, the knights also arrived and reported to Sheriel that the assassins had all been captured and imprisoned in the dungeon. Seeing the situation, they planned to take Sheriel away first, but Sheriel refused, remembering what the chief physician had said about preventing the child from using his power if possible. So she asked the knights to evacuate people from the plaza and check for remaining accomplices, while she stayed to calm the raging Karthizel. She reached out to touch the flames, but surprisingly, the flames evaded her hand. "Mother, don't come closer. It's because of me that you got hurt." Sheriel comforted him that he was so kind. He turned back crying, "But I couldn't do anything, I'm useless." Sheriel stepped forward and embraced him. "That's not true. Mother has always seen your efforts, and you even parted the flames to avoid hurting Mother. Mother only hopes you'll smile happily like a child, because you're my most beloved son. It's Mother who couldn't protect you well. It's regrettable that today's outing has to end here. Let's go home." Karthizel was finally pacified. The villains had already fainted. Sheriel ordered them to be taken back to the mansion and revived. A few days later, Sheriel wrote a letter for the assistant to deliver to the Emperor. He knew that when Madame specifically entrusted him with this, it meant no one else should see it. A few days later, in the Imperial Palace office, the Emperor received a top-secret letter. It was said to be from Madame Roperam. He was curious what kind of letter warranted the term top secret. After reading it, the Emperor laughed. "I know why Kian follows her like a dog." In the letter, Sheriel described what had happened a few days ago and offered to exchange information that would interest the Emperor. The emperor knew about the recent disturbances in the north and guessed it was the cause. At the same time, he was curious that his friend's one-sided love had actually resulted in something, so he called his subordinate to contact Sheriel at dawn while he went to a meeting. Before enemies take root in the empire, he must nip this in the bud. Meanwhile, the knight reported the interrogation results to Sheriel. Duchess Charity was so frightened she confessed everything before being questioned. They also found out Bertol's location and had sent knights to bring her back. But based on the clues, it was discovered that this wasn't just a plot by the two of them. The mastermind behind the scenes was Dark Guild Lucifer. He had approached Duchess Charity while she was looking for mercenaries and suggested kidnapping Karthizel as revenge. Sheriel decided to wait for Kian to handle it, but Dark Guild Lucifer hadn't provoked the Roperam family in her previous life. Sitting back and waiting wasn't an option, so Sheriel decided to write a letter seeking help, and the only one who could help her now was the Emperor. The next day, Sheriel received the Emperor's reply. After reading it, she felt quite exasperated. Although she knew she would be summoned to the palace after providing the intelligence, she didn't expect to be asked to come with Kian. The reason was that he was afraid Kian would be jealous. However, this matter had a good outcome, and next was dealing with Duchess Charity. A moment later, she arrived at the underground prison. As soon as she entered, she found them arguing. According to the report, their child had been placed in an orphanage. In Sheriel's view, they weren't qualified to be parents, or even human beings. In anger, she shouted at them, "How noisy, and you still have the energy to argue now." Duchess Charity shifted blame, claiming she was exploited. Sheriel was surprised that even now she wouldn't reflect, only thinking about how to absolve herself. At this point, the man also began to defend himself, saying it was Duchess Charity who made him join to earn quick money, and that he hadn't directly harmed Karthizel, and hoped to be forgiven. Sheriel interrupted them, "You don't reflect, only blame each other. I can't feel mercy for you. You tried to take my son, so you must pay the price." Afterward, Sheriel went to see Karthizel. He had been running a fever. Just then, a voice sounded, "He looks very ill." Sheriel turned around to find it was the witch. Sheriel knew she must have come with a purpose and quickly protected Karthizel, who was lying in bed. "I'm not here to collect the price. He looks very painful, doesn't he? I can ease his pain." Sheriel skeptically let her treat Karthizel. Under the witch's magic, Karthizel, whose energy had been rampaging, finally improved. He even tugged at Sheriel's sleeve, saying he was tired. Sheriel comforted him. "Mother will stay with you. Sleep well." She turned back to thank the witch. The witch waved it off, saying, "No need for thanks. Consider it my repayment for the joy you've brought me. Observing your fate has been extremely entertaining. Don't you find it interesting? How a very small thing can change everything." Looking at the hairpin, Sheriel realized it was from Bertol, and was surprised that the witch had been using it to keep an eye on her. The witch continued, "But I didn't come here to tell you about this. Sheriel, you lost the bet. According to our agreement, I'm here to collect the price." At this point, Sheriel was prepared to bet her life to protect those important to her. "What I want is a soul that doesn't exist in the original fate. That child in your belly, I'm taking it away." Sheriel finally realized why she had been feeling drowsy and craving sour foods lately. "This price is acceptable, right? After all, this child wasn't in your destiny. Even without her, you can live normally. But this was Kian's child, and if he knew about it, he would probably be very happy." So she said to the witch, "Even if the child wasn't destined, she exists now. I can't give you my child. But if there are other more precious things that satisfy you, I can find them for you." However, the witch's answer remained firm. "What I want is precisely the child that deviates from fate. But since you beg so earnestly, I'll agree. Let's make a new bet that can withdraw all the prices. How about that?" To protect the child in her womb, Sheriel could only agree. But the Winter Witch would never make a bet she had no chance of winning. She must ensure she had more possibilities to win. "Now I'll tell you the content of the bet. Guess whether the Duke in this expedition is dead or alive." These words struck Sheriel like a bolt from the blue. "Let me be clear. I bet on the former. Do you still want to bet?" It was undoubtedly making her choose between her husband and child. She didn't want to lose the happiness she had finally obtained. "You know how unfair all fated endings are, so tell me, what are my chances of winning this bet?" The witch was very pleased with her response. "This bet is indeed very advantageous for me. So I'll tell you how to save your husband. There's an informant secretly sending messages to the enemy near your husband. Because of him, your husband will be ambushed. And that sword carries poison from another country. A poison that causes excruciating pain and death within days. Only a special antidote can cure it. If you're afraid, you can give up this bet." Sheriel begged the witch to tell her who the informant was. "Telling you would be too advantageous for you, but as long as you find the antidote, your husband can survive. Hurry and find the antidote. You only have 5 days left." Sheriel asked the witch to tell her what the antidote was. With the hint of the witch, Sheriel decided to go look for it herself. She came alone to find Countess Harch. "I'm here to see Countess Harch." Someone at the door responded, "You've come a long way. I am Countess Harch. What do you need?" "I'm very sorry to disturb you so late. I hope you understand my urgent situation." After hearing her explanation, Countess Harch immediately agreed to help, which surprised her greatly. The Countess explained it was because she had cured her daughter's illness, so she would help her as much as possible. She didn't expect her kind act would be rewarded. She asked if she could look at the greenhouse because there was a flower she wanted. Meanwhile, Kian was also trying to end the war quickly to return home. Even though things were progressing smoothly, he felt very uneasy. He feared something might happen to his wife and son at home. Just as he lay down to sleep, a man sneaked in stealthily. Coming to the bedside, he viciously raised a dagger. Fortunately, Kian noticed and dodged, and then successfully counterattacked the enemy, recognizing it as a knife from barbarians. He questioned, "Aren't you a new recruit in our knights? So you joined with such a purpose?" The man said viciously, "Right, we're from the same tribe, yet you attack us so mercilessly." Kian coldly replied, "That's a pity. I deeply hate the blood flowing in my body. You plunder others daily, so it's normal people don't have a good impression of you. I hate you as much as the harm I suffered in the Empire. But in my youth, I tried to understand you, and even asked my mother, but her eyes only saw power and money, and she never treated those who worked for her as people. Our house was just her playground. Whenever I mentioned improving the servants' treatment, all I got was whipping. When I inherited the title, I still wanted to believe in you, but you thought I was weak and tried to occupy the Empire." At this point, the villain, tired of his lengthy speech, directly threw a flying sword. Kian, still recounting his hardships, was injured. Hearing the commotion, the knight rushed in to subdue the villain. On the other side, Sheriel also successfully made the antidote, thanks to the hint provided by the witch who had explained how to make the antidote, and even sent a bird to guide Sheriel. It was because she found observing others' lives very interesting. "Since you're risking your life, I should make the bet fair." After getting the antidote, Sheriel quickly headed to where Kian was. She prayed inwardly that she would arrive in time to save him. Led by the bird, she successfully found the unconscious Kian. At this point, Kian thought it was a hallucination before his death. Sheriel saw him near death, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't get the antidote into him, fearing that waiting longer would truly result in his death. She took the antidote into her own mouth and transferred it into his mouth. Moments later, Kian woke up and thought he was dreaming, but he felt better than before. Although his condition had improved greatly, Sheriel still wanted to return to the tent to check his state. She wanted the bird to continue leading her, but Kian immediately recognized it wasn't a bird. Indeed, the bird transformed into the witch the next second, which gave Sheriel a fright. Kian quickly protected Sheriel, afraid the witch had come to collect the price. But at this point, Sheriel was full of confidence. "Hello, I won, so I don't need to pay you the price anymore." The witch smiled and said, "That's right, you won, and I'm not that petty. Our bet is over, so enjoy your happy life from now on." Hearing this, Sheriel finally sighed in relief. Her long-standing worry was finally over. The witch leaned close and whispered to Sheriel, "As a reward for making me happy during this period, I'll tell you a secret. Your unborn child will be a girl with the same hair color as your husband and the same color as your pupils. Now I'm going to observe others. Wish you have a happy life." When Sheriel woke up again, she was in the tent. She had finally had a good sleep. Kian told her they could set off for home after getting everything in order today, while Sheriel planned to keep the secret of her pregnancy until they returned home. A few days later, they returned home. Karthizel came to welcome them at the first opportunity, and complained that Sheriel had left him behind. "I'm very angry because you went to find father without telling me." Sheriel stroked his head teasingly. "Oh, really? I originally wanted to tell my secret to you first, but it seems I'll have to tell your father first." Hearing this, he quickly said he wasn't angry, and obediently went forward to hug his father. "I'm happy you've returned safely. Let's take a walk in the garden after dinner tonight. But tonight I want to sleep with Mother." What he most wanted to know now was Mother's secret, under his adorable attack. Sheriel couldn't resist telling him. After hearing it, Karthizel immediately beamed with joy and kept asking if it was true. He curiously touched her belly. "How amazing is my sister in here? In a few months, I'll become a big brother." Kian looked completely puzzled about what Karthizel said. Sheriel smiled, saying she had planned to tell him during dinner, but Karthizel had revealed it. At this point, Karthizel ran off because he couldn't wait to prepare gifts for his soon-to-be-born sister. He couldn't even wait to eat. But Kian's face darkened. He grabbed her shoulders and urgently questioned her. "You're not alone now. How could you go to such a dangerous place?" Sheriel quickly used the child in her belly as an excuse. "Alright, our child is still listening. What if she thinks father is scary?" Kian had no choice but to caution her not to do such dangerous things again. That evening, Sheriel took out the letter sent by the Emperor. After reading it, Kian unhesitatingly burned it, saying it was all useless talk and she needn't pay attention. Meanwhile, everything that happened today was also seen by the witch. It reminded her why she had made the final bet with Sheriel. It turned out that it was all Sheriel's mother who used her soul as an exchange. She hoped the witch wouldn't deprive the happiness of her daughter. She knew she couldn't be a family with her daughter in this life. If she could be reborn as Sheriel's daughter, she could continue to love her, thus also fulfilling Sheriel's wish for a daughter. After hearing this, the witch couldn't help but mock. "I thought you were a pure soul, but I didn't expect you to be so cunning." But she still agreed to help them. It felt so magical, such interesting souls she might never encounter again. Because of this, she blessed them with a happy future for the rest of their lives. In the blink of an eye, Sheriel's belly had grown large. Although it was snowing, the weather wasn't cold. Perhaps the child would be born in the warm spring. She thought about how strange everyone had been lately. 5 days ago, when she asked about Karthizel's whereabouts, Bertol's eyes had been evasive. 3 days ago, when she wanted to go out for a walk, the maid had stopped her. 2 days ago, when she wanted to find Kian, the assistant informed her he wasn't around. Feeling like everyone was deliberately avoiding her, she couldn't help but shed tears. Just then, Karthizel came to the room. Finding her crying, he quickly apologized and told her that if she wanted to know what they did, she can follow him. The path was illuminated with pink light. Karthizel told her that all this was done by his father. Sheriel looked ahead and found Kian standing in front of carefully arranged flower arches. He walked forward and passionately confessed to Sheriel, "I've never given you a proper proposal. Now it's time to reveal my feelings to you." Only then did she realize everyone had been busy preparing for the proposal. Hearing his confession, she felt extremely happy. Kian embraced her, saying, "We'll have another wedding at the arrival of spring after our child is born." Soon the wedding day arrived. Karthizel stood nearby holding his sister. The story finally came to a perfect ending.